plugged in and whatever. That's just grumbling from Tad here. So yeah, let's go ahead and actually before we even start, what were we talking about live show for this year? Did we kind of?
We definitely want to do one.
Yeah,
call-in show.
I feel like at one point we kind of had an idea for like.
I mean, all our shows are recorded live.
Yeah, like a more of a call-in type show. I thought we had like an idea of when to do it, but I was trying to think of it when I was doing the prep on this show, and I couldn't remember if we had landed on like when a good time would be to do that. I think we talked about after it and Dr. Sleep came out.
Yeah.
So probably closer to the holidays. But yeah, we definitely gotta figure that out. I did just want to throw out there that I finally canceled our Skype number I've been paying for.
Oh, really?
I've been paying monthly for a long time, and we haven't used in years now.
Oh,
there's finally a point where I'm just like, all right, I'm sick of this. Like, there's like $15-20 a month that I was paying for it.
Wow. Why did you keep it?
I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's like, we got to have a phone number, right? And I'm like, finally canceled. I'm like, we don't need the damn phone number. So I'm just going to let everyone know. I guess I should say it on the normal podcast, too, that I will, as we kind of circle and get a date for that, we'll have to let people know to sign up for Skype, or I guess the other one, too, is there's like Discord. There's Google has a version. There's some different voice chat things out there. But I think if people want to, quote unquote, call in, it might be best for them to sign up for some of those things where they could just do it without a phone.
Yeah.
Like, since the 21st century after all, right? Okay, so yeah, we're here for a jam-packed episode. I was just telling Peter off mic, it's going to be a lot to talk about, which has been a trend we were looking at. Yeah. The last number of episodes have been on the longer side, but I just think that there's just so much going on that it's kind of natural. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get started here and dive right into it.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland, to the Dark Tower, came.
We are quartet, one from many. The palaver begins.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's Magnum Opus, the Dark Tower series. My name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
And we're here for roundtable number, I guess I can change the slide, number 78. So yeah, I'm just chugging right along here with the numbers.
Yeah.
And I don't know, looks like Peter's coming down with Captain Trips here in the studio.
Yeah, I got back from my cruise to Mexico, and apparently there's a cold going around the house. My wife's got it, I got it, so...
Yeah.
I'm sounding a little bit hoarse today, which is great because Tad tells me that we're going to have another long podcast. So it's like, oh, all right.
Well, you got some water.
I got water.
That's a good thing.
I got water.
Yeah, I hate this time of year because there's two things. The weather's changing and all the freaking little disease bags went back to school to get mosh pitting with a bunch of other disease bags. So like at work, everyone that has like parents are like now getting sick because their kids have gotten sick because they're going to school. Plus the weather change doesn't hurt. And I'm just like, I haven't got sick yet. I don't want to get fucking sick. And like I'm just like surrounded, like at work, at home, everywhere. It seems like I'm just like there's people sick, and I'm just like, God damn it. Oh, so yeah, I definitely looking forward to not getting sick. But yeah, Peter, just wanted to give everyone a heads up because he might get scratchy. But we'll go ahead and jump in real quick. First of all, I want to warn you about spoilers. The big one here is the Dark Tower series, obviously. With the roundtable episodes, we tend to kind of wander into stuff about ending, whether it's the ending of the whole series or the ending of characters or the ending of like plot lines or whatever. Those tend to come up quite a bit in these episodes. So if you haven't finished the entire 7 books of the Dark Tower, the proper Dark Tower series, there's the short stories and the Went Through the Keyhole and comics and stuff like that. But I don't know that people are as I don't know, as worried about spoiling those.
Mhm.
But for sure, the 7 books, if you haven't finished that, you may want to listen to our roundtable episodes. In those, we're
Book
in
club.
or book club. What did I say? Roundtable?
Yeah.
Okay. So book club episodes. In that, we're maybe, I don't know, into the getting close to the last fourth of the drawing of the 3. So with that, I know you, even if you're in the middle of book 4 or 5, that would be those would be safe podcasts to listen to, because we wouldn't randomly talk about something in book 7, for instance. We'll only stay as far as we are in the books. So stick to those if you haven't finished the books. The other one I want to warn about a little bit is It. However, we're going to talk about It Chapter 2, but we're going to actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that for the Palaver episode. People that follow us on Twitter already kind of know, because I mentioned it on there, that I was going to tuck all the It stuff in the Palaver section, which is always kind of toward the end of the episode anyway. So there will be a huge spoiler warning there. So if you haven't seen It, you can go ahead and feel free to listen to this podcast up until the point that we let you know, and then you could like pause it and wait until you've seen the movie to finish the rest of the episode. I do have a few things that cover It, but I think it's before it came out and they aren't really spoilery. So those are kind of your major spoiler warnings.
Talking news articles, right?
Yeah, there's a couple of news articles I believe that cover that cover It a little bit, but not like, oh, hey, this, like, not huge things. I believe one of them may reveal a little bit, but it's more deleted scene stuff, and I don't think that's like spoiler warning stuff. Next up, if you want to find us, you can find us a number of ways: Apple Podcast service, Stitcher, or any podcast service really we should be available on. If you could be so kind to subscribe, rate, and review us on especially Apple Podcasts, it helps us a lot. Those things definitely raise the exposure for the show and allow other people to find us, which we definitely enjoy growing our extended quartet. Next up, the show notes are darktowerpalaver.com, and on there you'll find basically, like for this episode, for instance, when I post this episode, I'll also post the show notes. On the show notes, you'll see all the things I show Peter, the stuff that he sees on the screen here, as well as links to all the articles that I cover. I don't necessarily pull everything from every article. So if you want to read the full articles, you can go on the show notes and find those articles and read them in their entirety. And then next up, as I mentioned, we are an extended quartet, and if you are a new listener, you are now part of that, unless you don't want to be and you stop listening. But if you do stick around, you're part of our extended quartet, and there's a number of ways that you can engage and be part of the quartet, and Peter can tell you about that.
You can email us. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. And then give us a follow on the Twitter. It's @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. We stream all of our shows on YouTube. It's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. We do not leave the book clubs up due to copyright, but all the roundtables do stay up, so you can go back and watch them and see the slides as Tad shows them to me here in the office. As well as, I know that we've had a couple times where we've played video clips as well. So you can check those out on YouTube, youtube.com/darktowerpalaver.
Yeah, indeed. And I do like the way that YouTube does their watching like previous live streams. You'll actually see the chat box on the side of the video, and it plays real time with the way it was in the video. So you can kind of follow the conversation. You'll be able to see what people are saying in the chat along with the video. And as we like engage with conversation with them and stuff, you'll kind of be able to see that unfold. So it is one way to do it. I don't know, like we do have some listens. Obviously, the majority still listen on podcasts, but if you're interested in that and avoiding like going to the show notes and you just want to do it all in one go, the YouTube is the best way to do that. Okay, so diving in, we actually are starting off with some Dark Tower news, I guess, but this is kind of a little bit more cryptic, I suppose. It's actually a tweet from Glenn Mazzara. And we'll go ahead and pull it up here. And he wrote on September 3rd, 2019, he says, just wrote a scene that Becca Noble, at Becca_Noble, describes as I'm just going to avoid the Twitter lingo. It describes it as Downtown Abbey plus David Lynch plus Stephen King plus Jumbo's Clown Room. So that's kind of a strange thing there. Now, a Twitter follower of ours linked, I mean, I saw it obviously, but they did kind of at us and showed like pointed out this tweet, and then they went on, and it's C Betts was the I don't think that's their full screen name, but that's like their display name, and they pointed out the fact that Mazzara is currently writing a script described as Lynch meets Downton Abbey meets Stephen King, and it was read by Becca Noble, who profiles herself as Dark Tower TV script witch, Dark Tower script coordinator on LinkedIn, bodes well for a green light. And I actually went and there was somebody that tweeted a screenshot here, and yeah, she does indeed she is shown here as script coordinator and showrunner's assistant at Dark Tower TV. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, so I mean, we obviously know that they've filmed the pilot and they're already in post-production. We know that filming's pretty much wrapped on that. So the fact that they're writing a script, which is likely for the series, does bode well, as C Betts points out, for a green light, because generally speaking, when it comes to professionals like this, they're not going to write something unless they are being paid for it.
Yeah.
Writers can just write on their own and whatever, but like a lot of professional people don't do that because they see it as a waste of time and effort if it's not something they feel is like already sold or whatever.
Yeah, why work on this when I could be going on to another project that's actually going to bring in a paycheck?
Yeah, so I find it hard to believe they're just doing this just because, like, whether they have a green light or whether they have an indication of some interest from Amazon to like write more scripts maybe. But either way, this tweet, which I can go back to here, is, I don't know, I think it does kind of excite me that maybe a green light or maybe even if not, maybe if it's not a full-on green light, maybe it's a flashing yellow light, is maybe there for the Dark Tower series. So, and I mean, there were some people speculating in the comments about what this might be. I think somebody mentioned that Jumbo's Clown Room is I think it's an LA strip club. So Downton Abbey, David Lynch and Stephen King plus, strip club. I don't know what that might be, but yeah, definitely the mention of Becca Noble is strong indicator that maybe Dark Tower is chugging along past even what they've filmed already, which is really cool. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. So we'll keep an eye on that in terms of to see what comes of, maybe hopefully a green light here pretty soon. I know just recently they've been doing a lot of forward motion on Wheel of Time. I believe added some people. Lord of the Rings is obviously filling things out. What is his name? Will Potter. He was he was just in something recently. He was in We Are the Millers, and he's the meme that's like, you guys are getting paid. But he was actually originally he's the one that Cary Fukunaga had for Pennywise. So he's still in my mind stuck as like Pennywise, even though he hasn't played that role. He's one that like I always think of for that. And I want to say that, but either way, he got cast recently in like Lord of the Rings, Wheel of Time's added some stuff. So yeah, it just feels to me like there's some forward motion. So every time I see one of those, there's part of me that's like, God, I hope that we get ours here pretty soon. So, yeah, that's that. Cool little thing from Twitter. And like I said, that was from September 3rd. Cause we're basically going back to the beginning of September now with our news as moving forward here.
Yeah.
So, next up, and this is actually one that I couldn't remember if we had done anything like this before, but I actually searched through like the notes and stuff and I couldn't find anything. So I don't know. This is basically what it is because it's coming out. It feels like everyone and their dog is doing Stephen King coverage of different kinds. And one here from Steve Fox from Paste Magazine on September 6, 2019 is the 10 best Stephen King novels. And I don't know, does that strike you as memory as anything that we've done? I know we've done like top adaptations. We've done we did one list of like the best supernatural villains, which actually it's funny because it actually came up again because remember it had like I remember some of the pictures because I remember copying them, but like there was the split in half cow for Under the Dome from the series, and there was like a number of them. I think Randall Flagg was number one. That recently got republished, which is funny because I actually went through and found in my show notes the time that we covered that the first time. I'm like, okay, so all they really did is they took the same exact fucking thing they put out months ago and they just put it out again new as a new article. But the big reason that it even came up on my radar is because Glenn Mazzara retweeted it and then put he said like number 1, 3, and 4, and 1 is Randall Flagg, 3 was Crimson King, and 4 was Blaine the Mono. So Glenn pointing out the 3 that would be at his disposal long term as Dark Tower wise. So like I know we've done that, but I don't think we've done top 10 Stephen King novels, and I felt like the best way to go about this is like we did the first time get your reactions. See what you think. I think like in your head you can probably like pencil in what you feel might be what and where and that kind of thing. But also this could spark us into a future conversation down the road of maybe coming up with our own and with the listeners as well.
We haven't done that.
I don't know that we have. Because like I couldn't find anywhere in the notes. We haven't covered it in a news story. If we've done something like in terms of for like just between ourselves and the listeners, maybe I missed that somehow. I don't know where. I'll have to go through all of my past documents for the show and see if there's anything. But no, I couldn't find anything. So, but I'm not saying we have to do it ourselves. But I found this interesting. So
yeah.
He starts off here, says Stephen King has transcended anything we could muster up to write about him in 2019. One of the most transformative writers in American history. King helped kickstart a horror boom throughout the 70s and 80s and outlived it, along with a near-fatal accident, to keep his career alive through this very month, which sees the release of The Institute, King's 61st novel since 1974. And that was just like one that I like at first just blushed over, but then I like stopped. And I thought to myself, like, Thomas Harris wrote the Hannibal Lecter books. He wrote Black Sunday as well. I think he's maybe written 5 or 6, 7 novels total in his career. It dates 30-something, 40 years maybe.
Yeah.
You know, you think about, I mean, there are some of these ones that are powerhouses, obviously. There's some that kind of get written without the author, but under the author's branding. I want to say like Tom Clancy still has novels coming out, even though he's passed away, I believe.
Yeah.
Because there's just like this thing now where it's like it's just a brand.
Yeah.
But just to think about 61 novels, man, like that's fucking huge. And that's also an interesting thing for him to push out there, to say that King helped to kickstart the horror boom of the 70s and 80s. And really, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think, when did Carrie come out? Was it 74? The movie,
novel,
the movie came out in 70. So yeah, you're talking, I mean, you had some movies that still came out before that. You had like The Exorcist in 72. So it's not like, and you had like Rosemary's Baby in the late 60s or early 60s.
Mid 60s.
Yeah, I think it's early 60s. I think I actually got in a discussion with this recently with someone because Sharon Tate was murdered in 69. So yeah, I think it was earlier on. So
and there was rumors flying around that it was a result of the cult and everything like that, because her husband directed Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah, yeah.
So there was rumors that it was a cult seeking revenge and they killed her.
Yeah.
For that.
But yeah, I mean, he doesn't give it 100% to King here. He just says that he helped kickstart the horror boom, which is something I never really considered before. Because yeah, there certainly is a horror boom in the 70s, 80s. It kind of died out in the 90s a little bit with terrible, terrible sequels and horrible things. Until I think Scream helped kind of reinvigorate horror and push us into the new century. But yeah, I think that's really cool to think about, because yeah, I mean, you're talking Carrie came out in 74, Salem's Lot in 75, and The Shining in 77. Like, yeah, that's and then by within 3 years, The Shining had an adaptation. Carrie had an adaptation before the 80s. So yeah, that's kind of a cool thing I've never thought about before. And yeah, again, just the 61 novels blows my mind. That's insane. And how rich we are as King fans with the content.
Yeah, Jim from Rhode Island points out in the chat, and that doesn't count as short stories.
Yeah, it doesn't. He actually does point that out. I just didn't take that part of it. But yeah, he just said just strictly novels. Yeah, when you take all the short stories and everything else that he's done over the years, like I believe that almost doubles the number. I think it's like in the 120s or something if you count like every short story and stuff. I think that even got brought up in one of the articles when they was joking about how like pretty much everything that King does gets adapted right now.
Right.
And I think it maybe mentioned like 120 total things, somewhere in that ballpark, if you count short stories and whatnot. So it says the staggering number does. Oh yeah, actually I did take it. So the staggering number doesn't even count short story collections, nonfiction scripts, and other ephemera. While King hasn't maintained a perfect batting average across those dozens and dozens of releases, he hasn't lost his spark either. Early buzz on The Institute is highly positive, and recent sales of The Outsider, Revival, Mr. Mercedes, and more all continue to garner praise and enviable sales. Which yeah, I guess that. I mean, we've talked about this being the second golden age of King. There's
sure
a lot of great stuff coming out, and he certainly hasn't lost his appeal in terms of, I feel like he's still one of the big authors that when he puts out a book, I think like I'm sure book sales for his are fairly robust still, even though he's a dude would be on AARP if he was so inclined. Beyond the printed page, King is in the midst of an ongoing film and television revival with adaptations like Gerald's Game, the upcoming Doctor Sleep, and two-part It, lighting up screens big and small. As Pennywise creeps back into the theaters this week for Andy Muschietti's directed It Chapter 2. Float into the list below and find out where source material ranks on our list of King's best novels. Note short stories and novellas collections, while among King's best work, were exempt from this list, as was his memoir on writing, which I think is totally fair. And I would say that if we do end up doing this, I think we should have the same stipulations.
Just
like,
novels.
Yeah, because short stories and like on writing, I feel like those are such great things, but it muddies up the waters a little bit.
For sure.
So we'll go ahead here and start. Number 10, 1979's The Long Walk. And we actually talked about this not too long ago. He says, released under the pseudonym Richard Bachman, The Long Walk is actually the first novel Stephen King wrote. He just didn't finish it and sell it until after Carrie, and a few of his all-time classics were already on the were already on shelves.
Adaptation coming, so that's 1 out of 10.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm going to keep count for us,
just
to see out of the 10 how many have had or are in the process of having an adaptation being made.
Yeah. And he says, known best today as a precursor to Battle Royale, The Hunger Games, and countless other teams compete to the death at the behest of totalitarian society iterations, which is interesting because that is kind of a big like niche genre, subgenre, and it's interesting to think that King may have been one of the ones to help kick that off a little bit. He says longest walk. That's weird. The Long Walk takes place in a world which 100 teen boys annually participate in a walking competition. Walking may not sound as thrilling as a fast-paced sci-fi death match, but these boys must maintain a minimum speed throughout their march, and the contest only ends when all but one walker is dropped dead or been eliminated for violating the rules. It is not a stretch to feel the influence of the Vietnam War here, as King depicts a country eager to send its young men off to a grueling, inevitable death, with the promise of a better life dangling as the prize for those who survive, that's an interesting take on it. There's a potential anger present in most of Bachman's books, and the Long Walk mines that most potently. So that's interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So is that one agree, disagree? You've read it, haven't you? Didn't you?
I have.
You read that? Yeah. You know what I was thinking about as I was putting some of this stuff together for this show? I think you completely lapped me on King readership.
No,
I think you have.
No,
I think you have, dude. Because you've been hitting stuff really hard. I mean, I started the whole thing of going through everything, but that kind of died on the vine a little bit. I need to definitely get into that. But yeah, there's a bunch that you've hit up over the last couple of years that I haven't read. And you've read most of the stuff that I have. I've aimed you at most of the stuff that I've read. So, yeah, I think that if we really tallied it up, I would bet you'd have a higher count than me.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think the apprentice has become the master, sir.
Maybe we'll do that one day. We'll count it out.
Yeah, indeed. And maybe in a less busy episode, we could just go through my list that I have, and I'll make check boxes, and we'll just go through it. I would be willing to. I'd be willing to bet that. Yeah. Just a feeling I have.
Okay.
But what do you think of it? Number 10, do you think that is fitting?
It's kind of surprising to see it on the top 10, honestly.
Okay.
As good as it is, it's something that's ingrained in me that if he wrote it under Richard Bachman, people, not him, not us, but general people will
discount it.
Yeah, discount it. That's the right word. We'll discount it a little bit.
Now, Misery was not under Bachman, right? But it was going to be. That one was going
to be,
but it was actually published under him. Okay.
Yes.
Because that would be the one that would jump to my head where it's like you can't discount that one. But yeah,
but if you
I see what you're saying.
But if you go through the Bachman novels and you read through them and you're like, oh yeah, that's a good novel, but it's not like if you walked up to a stranger who's like, hey, you're a Stephen King fan? Yeah, I love his books. Name 3.
Yeah,
no one's gonna name a Bachman book.
Yeah.
And that's where, and that's so it's not a negative surprise. It's a pleasant surprise.
Yeah,
because it was a good novel. It really was a good story.
And you think it fits? Like you think that
it's a good spot for it? Yeah, if it's gonna be there 8, 9, 10,
and even on the list, do you think it belongs on the list?
Of the ones I've read,
knee-jerk reaction. I know that you haven't read everything. I know that whatever. I'm just saying. Overall, this is gonna be knee-jerk because I'm throwing these all at you real time. But I just want knee-jerk reaction. No. Does it belong on the list? And if so, is it on the right place on the list?
No, it doesn't belong on the list.
Okay.
To me, no.
Yeah.
Again, me.
Without having you fill out a top 10, and then, because you could very well be that you filled out a top 10, went, I'll be damned, it does belong on there.
Right.
But just where we're at.
Knee jerk, yes.
Yeah, just totally where we're at.
I got you.
Reaction.
Knee jerk reaction, no. I think if I'm going to make an estimate of where it would fit in the novels that I've read, 12 to 17 range.
Okay,
I'd
top
say
20.
Top 20 for sure. It's a good novel. But I'd have a really hard time kicking something like Firestarter or It, or, I mean, let's be honest, it's going to be top 3 for me. or something like, Carrie or Misery. You mentioned Misery. Out of the top 10 for that.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So then number 9 is Lizzy's Story, 2006.
Haven't heard of an adaptation for this one.
God, I can't remember. Hold your thought on that. A little bit.
Hold that.
Yeah, a little bit. I actually, there's another article that we have coming that kind of lists out stuff. And what I've actually done is I'll even just spoil it a tiny bit. What I did is I basically took their thing and I'm going to keep it, and we're going to have a tracking board that we'll be able to have to where, like, anytime news breaks and it's like, hey, some new adaptation, we'll just add it to that, and I'll have a slide save that we can just go to and go.
New adaptations announced.
Let's look at the big board here. So yeah, we'll see with this one. So it says Lizzy's Pulitzer Prize-winning husband has been dead for 2 years, and when her story begins, but the ghost metaphorically haunts her. His ghost metaphorically haunts her at the prompting of a nosy academic. Lizzy finally sorts through her husband's remaining papers, revealing secrets that even 25 years marriage couldn't uncover. Much of Lizzy's story, written as a sort of love letter to King's wife Tabitha, reads like a non-genre domestic drama, which makes the moments of horror and romance that much more affecting. This one, no doubt, will be a controversial one among King's more straightforward Fear Fiend fans, which I actually object to. I don't think most King fans are that.
No.
I think that's a very, very gross oversimplification of King fans. And
for sure,
in the years we've done this podcast, I don't think a single person's come to us and said that, like, they only like King's horror stuff. Like, I think that most people in our audience are just like us, where it's like, dude, quit calling King a fucking horror author. Like, he writes a lot of shit.
Yeah, it's what we say.
Don't pigeonhole him.
Yeah, it's almost what we say every single time where we talk to people about, oh, King's just a horror novel writer. He can't write anything that's not horror. It's like, okay, have you heard of The Green Mile?
Yeah.
But Shawshank Redemption? I mean, like, there's a lot there that's not horror. I mean, I'm sorry. Go back one slide. That's not a horror novel.
Yeah.
Is that someone going to call The Hunger Games a horror series?
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's not horror.
And I would throw it out there for listeners. I won't even poo-poo you if you're in that vein. If you are someone that's a straightforward Fear Fiend fan, let us know. I'd love to hear it, because, like, I just don't know that I don't think that's a wide category in the King fandom.
Well, it's not us saying it's a negative thing if you're just a fan of his horror work.
No,
because let's be perfectly honest, his horror work is fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
It's primo. I mean, when you start looking at things like It, The Shining, Pet Sematary, I mean, right there's 3 classics for modern horror.
Yeah,
that rival anything previously, and anything since then. So it's not a negative thing to be just a horror fan, but to pigeonhole King fans as only these horror freaks that only want horror and that's all they ever read is horror. No, that's not true, and that's not fair, because let's be fair, King's work isn't all horror.
No, and I would say even most, because I've even gotten a discussion a little bit about It Chapter 2, and I won't go too far in terms of anything, but, like, in general, with people bitching about the humor in it, and I'm just like, it's the same argument we heard from Chapter 1, and I was like, I kept raising my hand to people and being like, you guys realize, like, the It book is not a horror novel either.
No.
Like, there are moments of it that they're fucking horrific, but, like, if you look at that overall thing and just tallied each page and said, this page is horror, this page is not, I believe 100% you're going to end up with that and show that a majority of that book is not horror, because, like, how much of that book is, like, the coming of age, relationships of the kids, and going through even normal life shit. I almost say that, like, Pennywise is like set dressing. He's a big part of it, but he's not the full part of it. It's not an entire horror novel. But I feel like people have it in their head that King is horror, therefore everything King writes is horror, and It is obviously one of his most iconic works, so people are just like, it's a horror thing, so I'm going in and expecting just a straight fucking horror movie, and so the fact that there's humor in this pisses me off, and, like, that's just such a fallacy, because I don't think that and that's like telling people is like, go read the fucking novel. It's not like there are horrific shit in there, and ultimately, yes, like a killer clown is kind of like, I don't want to say central, but like kind of the backbone a little bit. But so much of the rest of that book is like there's whole chunks that you go through that Pennywise is not even thought of, mentioned, anything. It's them and their childhood stuff. And
well, not even that, and not to go in, because we already talked about it. We're going to talk about it chapter 2 later, but the other part of it is not just necessarily a coming of age, but also a coming of terms with your childhood.
Yeah,
because there's a whole section dedicated to them being adults and having memories come back to them because they've forgotten everything like that. So it's not just a coming of age story; it's also a coming to terms with your childhood.
Yeah.
So it's two parts, like
gripping with childhood trauma.
Yeah, exactly. Like how do you handle this that happened to you? You know, and I'm not going to delve into it, but
yeah, we don't have to.
But even like that, take it and break it into two parts. Just two categories. Is this horror or is this adventure? Which is what I would constitute it as. Building the bunkhouse in the Barrens.
Yeah.
Adventure. Running from Bowers. Depends on which one. Adventure or horror.
Yeah.
You can flip a coin for some of them, but there are ones that are straight horror.
But let's just say, in general, wouldn't you say a lot of it feels like Stand By Me more than it does like what people have in their mind for it?
Yeah.
You know, like it just is that kind of book, and I just feel like I would buck the trends a little bit and say and argue that maybe it is not a horror overall. I mean, there's aspects of it that are some of the most terrifying things you've read. But I don't know that trumps everything else that's in that book. I guess
I'd still have to say that it is a horror because the main plot would be horror. What happens outside of that main plot, which is what we're talking about here, may not necessarily be horror elements, which is fine because that's the way a lot of horror stories are. There's a lot of grieving. There's a lot of dealing with issues and stuff like that. That's not the actual horror aspect of the story. Look at Salem's Lot's a good one. There's a horror element. Vampires are taking over a town.
Yeah.
But there's also individual issues. A guy is falling in love, and stuff like that. That doesn't make it that story is horror.
Yeah.
Just because it's taking place in a horror novel.
Yeah.
But the main story is still horror. That main plot line is still horror. So I would debate what you're saying is that, oh, well, it maybe shouldn't be constituted as a horror because it's majority coming of age stuff. Yes, I agree there is some coming of age stuff, but that main plot line is still Pennywise and it.
Yeah.
And its holdover Derry. So I would still constitute it as a horror, but is it just a horror novel? Are you just going to pigeonhole it that there's nothing in this book but horror? No, absolutely not. That's not fair to the book.
And exactly. And I think that, and the thing is, I'd say I'm a horror fiend. I fucking love horror. You know that. I mean, that's one of my favorite genres. But I don't go to King and go, I only want horror. In fact, there's times with like something like 11/22/63 where I'm like, I love that fucking book. It's probably one of my top 10 if I were to rank it. Mm-hmm. And there's almost no horror in that. There's maybe small moments that horror arises, but it's not the main thrust of that story.
Well, I mean,
that's a love story. Can you constitute
anything in 11/22/63 as horror? I mean, that's the thing. Is like that's also going to a further discussion. We may have to have this discussion at one point. What is horror?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, let's be perfectly honest. Mr. Mercedes doesn't get into anything horror. Because I'm sorry, a mass murderer is not necessarily horror unless told in a certain light.
Yeah.
That's a detective story.
Yeah.
That's not a horror novel. There's some scary parts of 11/22/63.
Yes.
But that doesn't make it a horror.
Yeah.
Just like
exactly.
It's just like I just spaced on it. The Body. I forgot what the movie's called.
Stand By Me.
Stand By Me. There's intense moments in that as well. That's not a horror.
Yeah.
There's no horror in that story.
Yeah.
And so for me, there's scary moments and there's horror. Friday the 13th is a horror movie. It's set to be a horror movie. It's going out of its way to scare you.
Yeah.
There are movies out there that are love stories that will scare you at times.
Yeah.
It happens. I mean, look at The Green Mile. We brought it up earlier. That's kind of what I'm talking about here. There's parts in The Green Mile that'll make even the toughest people tear up.
Yeah.
and it's horrible and it's terrifying to think about.
Yeah.
But it's not a horror novel.
Yeah.
It's not a horror story.
Yeah, exactly. So I would just kind of object a little bit to that idea that there's straightforward fear fiend fans of King. I just don't think that's a real thing.
Yeah.
But he says, but as a representative of King's 21st century work, which has found him exploring, by and large, a more completive and sympathetic sympathetic worldview, you could do much worse. More recent novels like The Outsider and Revival hit higher highs of horror, but are less consistent and ultimately less affecting than Lizzy's story. So, yeah, it's interesting. So, what's your thought process?
Haven't read it.
Oh, okay.
So I
really
got no opinion on this one.
Okay. All right. Cool. Sounds good. And then there's Travis in the chat here, betting that The Stand will top the list here. You've already kind of predicted that it's probably going to be somewhere.
It's
going to
be. It's got to be top 3. If it's not, then we gotta have a talk.
Okay, so the next up, The Dead Zone, 1979. Reluctant protagonist Johnny Smith spends almost 5 years in a coma and then awakens with the ability to see hidden details and limited predictions upon touching people and objects. At first, Smith wants only to maintain his normal life as a school teacher, but when his abilities draw unwanted attention, he soon finds himself called upon to help solve a sadistic murder streak. His successful role in the investigation creates enough of a stir that he lets go of his job and must start over in another state, where he encounters Greg Stilson, rising politician who raises an alarm for Smith. When Smith arranges a chance to touch Stilson's hand, the vision of the horrible future he receives may finally be enough to spur Smith into action. And then he says the Dead Zone is a novel-length treatment of would you kill baby Hitler to prevent the Holocaust conundrum. It feels more relevant than ever in our current political climate. Have you read this one?
No.
Okay, because we talked about this one on the adaptation list, and because
Christopher Walken played him, right?
Yeah, because of that conversation, and then like just overall, like I think this might be really close to next on the list for me.
Same here. That description of it, like would you kill baby Hitler? Being a history fan that I am, yes, sign me up for this. In fact, I'm going to go put it on my Audible wish list right now.
Yeah, exactly. So what about baby Thanos? Just
it all worked out in the end.
First of all, that's horrible. Yeah, so The Dead Zone. So you said you haven't read this.
No.
So again, no opinion probably. Although the fact it was on the adaptation list maybe shows that it is a stronger on the stronger side of King's works. So let's go ahead and jump over to number 7, which is Pet Sematary, 1983.
Okay.
It says, when a cat belonging to his daughter was killed on the busy truck route in front of his house, King wondered what would happen if he buried the cat and 3 days later it came back somewhat altered. And what if a child were killed too and then came back changed and not for the better? In the novel, Dr. Lewis Creed takes a job at the University of Maine Infirmary and moves his wife, daughter, and 2-year-old son Gage into a house by a busy interstate. The highway soon consumes his daughter's cat and later his son, but the permanency of death is a hard lesson for a parent to learn, and when Creed interferes with the natural order, fate slams him tenfold with retribution. King once wrote that the horror writers are afraid to open the door all the way to show the monster's face. In Pet Sematary, King swings it wide. Beyond the darkest and dimmest shape, or the darkness and the dim shape of Oz, the great and terrible awaits. So,
did he spell it out that way?
No, that's totally me.
Okay.
But
I was going to say kudos for him for doing that because that's just fantastic if he did that.
But who's not thinking that, right?
For sure.
So what do you think?
I think it's a little too low. I think it should be up closer to top 5. Pet Sematary is terrifying and a great read.
Yeah.
What would a father do?
Probably, honestly, I think it might be the bleakest. I know I know that it's like long had this reputation and stuff, but like I feel like maybe because the fact that it's so old, and not that it changes anything, but I think that just because it's so much in the subconscious of society, I don't know that people maybe give it as much credit as they should, but I really think it might be the bleakest fucking thing that King's written, man. And he's written some bleak shit.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'd say the only thing that comes close he didn't even write was The Mist, and I think the bleakness comes more from the adaptation that he didn't write than it does from the actual story that he wrote. So,
yeah, for sure.
But God, yeah, Pet Sematary, that's a rough one. And I agree with you. I think when I was getting this all typed out into the show notes, I think I was a little bit shocked to see this down here. I feel like this would be more top 5. And even Travis in the chat, is that what you're going to point to?
Yeah, that's literally what I was about to read. Go ahead.
Yeah, he says, I would say top 3 would probably be The Shining, It, and The Stand. Pet Sematary or Carrie could be surprise dark horses. So even there, that's one that could easily sneak its way into the top 3. So to find it down at 7 seems a little bit peculiar.
I'm gonna go out on a limb. Tad doesn't show me these beforehand. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Carrie doesn't make the list.
Oh yeah, and you know, I'm actually noticing that I fucking made a mistake. My next slide is another Pet Cemetery, which is fucking weird. I don't know how the hell I did that. So yeah, the next one is Pet Cemetery again. I guess I must have duplicated it on accident.
Pet Cemetery 2? Are you announcing that there's a Pet Cemetery 2 in the works?
There is. Edward Furlong was in it.
No, I mean a novel.
Oh, a novel, yeah.
King's only done a few sequels, hasn't he?
Yeah, not many.
Many.
I think we mentioned that back when Doctor Sleep was coming out. That
yeah.
I mean, Mr. Mercedes
that's not a sequel. That's a series.
Yeah,
it's like The Dark Tower is not counted as a sequel to me.
But do you think that King wrote Mr. Mercedes thinking that would be a series
yes.
then?
The way he ended the first book, yes.
Okay. Because, I mean, there was part of me that just wondered if he was just so enamored with the characters that he wanted to go back to them. I guess it's kind of the difference of like the Star Wars versus like the Lord of the Rings, right?
I would say so, except the second book doesn't go back to the same characters. Some of them.
Yeah.
But doesn't really focus on Brady.
Okay.
So I would say no, that was always planned out to be at least a trilogy, and now we're finding out that it's 5, at least. Because character from the first one is now going to be in the sequel to The Outsider. So I'm saying that series. I think that he started this kind of knowing, maybe not knowing how far it would go into The Outsider and beyond, but I think at least the 3 Mercedes novels, I got a feeling those were planned to me.
Okay.
So sequel-wise, direct sequels to standalone to his works. The only one that comes to mind is Dr. Sleep.
Yeah, it's I mean, how do you count like Black House and Talisman?
That's a sequel.
Okay, or is that more of like a companion?
No, I'd say sequel. The ending of the first one didn't leave many doors open, so you can always kind of tell when there's a conclusion. It would be like if he came back with an It, volume 2, It 2 kind of thing.
Yeah.
That we find out that an egg survived or something like that.
Yeah.
That would be like the way in. But if you go back and read the first novel, you can see that he didn't intentionally plan that. It's not like in the afterword, all of a sudden we go back under Daria, there's the one lone egg and it hatches. Oh, look, a sequel's coming.
Yeah.
No, it's not like that.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one, number 6, is actually a cheat.
So wait, so did we miss number 7 then?
No, it was Pet Cemetery.
It was
right?
Pet Cemetery. Okay.
Yeah, Pet Cemetery 7. So 6 is his first cheat.
Oh, come on.
No, you know what? To give him credit, this actually makes it way more tenable to allow the Dark Tower to be ranked. Because we've always said if there's ever any ranking of King stuff, you can't really count Dark Tower. Because how do you do that? Like, because generally we thought like if you just broke it up and let that, like, there'd be people that their whole top 10 would be dominated by Dark Tower books. So like, honestly, lumping it together, is a cheat. But at the same time, I get it because it allows him to, and even for me, like that's like seeing him do this is the first time I'm like, you know what, maybe that's the way I would do it, and actually allow me to like put Dark Tower in its place for my opinions,
Okay.
because I always would have discounted it. I always would have said I'm going to do a top 10 King list, but Dark Tower doesn't count because I'm not going to let 7 books or now 8 books get pollute up the list. Same with like sci-fi. I think I've told you before when I did that list for you for all the genres. With sci-fi, I told you I'm putting Star Wars as a singular thing because I'm not going to have
it's one story.
A top 10 that's like 6 movies of it are fucking Star Wars movies. Like, no, I'm gonna put it as 1 because I don't want like 6 out of 10 of mine to be fucking dominated by one basic story. So it is a little bit of a cheat, but I'm okay with it. So he starts off here, says the man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed, with what is now considered one of the best opening lines in fiction, which is a bold statement, like easily King's best, but like that puts it up against like some of the greatest novels in human history, right? And best of times, worst of time. Like there's like, that puts it up against a lot of great lines. And I'm not saying it doesn't belong in that conversation. I'm just saying that's a damn bold statement. I see a lot of people say it's definitely King's finest opening line, or maybe his greatest line he's ever written. But to say in all of fiction, that's
I would say one of the best in fiction, but could I say it's better than
He does
every
say,
line?
and he does say one of the best.
Oh,
so,
okay.
But still, I'm just saying that opens it to a door of like, wow, that's
I'd put it up there.
yeah,
I would put it up there.
Yeah,
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. All I can think about is that joke from Third Rock from the Sun where Dick reads that. And the best of times is the worst of times. Flips to the end of the book and goes, I'm not reading 300 and something pages if you can't make up your mind in the first sentence. Puts it down.
No, my favorite's The Simpsons. It was the best of times. It was the blurst of times. You stupid monkey. Because Burns has all the monkeys typing on 1,000 chimps typing on 1,000 typewriters. And the one gets most of the line, but he still yells at it. So what do you think? Assuming that Dark Tower is able to be one thing, number
That's
6.
way too low.
Okay, and I think Travis.
Travis agrees with me.
In the chat there.
He says it's gross.
He says Stephen King kicked off the most ambitious and perhaps most inconsistent undertaking of his long and storied career. We're going to cheat and lump the whole saga together from The Gunslinger 1982 to the Went to the Keyhole 2012 because separating out just one installment is nigh on impossible, which, yeah, I would agree. Hell, the complicated nature of the Dark Tower is what keeps so many King fans from taking the 8-book plus one short story plunge, and it's hard to blame the cautious. Combining high fantasy, Arthurian legend, Western trappings, bits of imaginative language, moments of intense horror, and characters and concepts pulled from throughout the vast bibliography. The Dark Tower is King's very own shared universe from long before that term got used and abused by movie studios. It often feels like anything goes within the pages of the Dark Tower, but that genre-busting spontaneity is part of the charm, as with the epic hero's journey at the series' center. It says most authors can only dream of producing something as grand and sprawling and beloved as the Dark Tower. For King, it's an accomplishment plenty of his fans avoid, which speaks to just how much legendary paper and ink he can claim as his own. Yeah, because I mean, dude, and that's true for him to say is like most authors can only dream to do something this big, let alone to let these 8 books be part of 61 novels that he's written, right? That's pretty crazy to think about. Is this a huge achievement of a series in the midst of such a huge, like, say it was Thomas Harris, with the way he writes, he would have, this would be all he'd written, and it'd probably be like George R.R. Martin where he still wasn't finished with it. So, yeah, it's a huge achievement by King, but I think I agree, definitely feels low to me, but I guess we are biased, right?
Ryan wrote in the chat, Wizard and Glasses by itself is one of the best fantasy books ever.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, I mean,
having not read a ton of fantasy, I can't compare.
But I would say it's one of King's best books.
For sure.
If I split them, and if I was just going to go, you know what, I am going to split them, I can almost guarantee Wizard and Glass is going to be in my top 10. I'd say almost, because I'd have to look at everything. But I would guess if there was one Dark Tower book that would end up in that list, it's probably going to be Wizard and Glass for me. Because for the most part, except for that little bit at the beginning, that's a very self-contained story. And it's one that you can give to someone that's never read the Dark Tower series and just go, hey, start at this page and read this story. Like that, like you'd lose a tiny bit, but there'd be a tiny bit of like spillage. But overall, I think they would get like, dude, this is a great fucking story,
Yeah.
And which I guess goes to like what we're doing with the Dark Tower series on Amazon, right? Hopefully we can tie a bunch of people in and pull them into this universe through this story. So, Travis says that's a bold statement, but I agree with it. I think the first book has a lot of lofty poetic writing, and it doesn't really continue on as much as this, as much in the series. Palaver at the Golgotha, yeah. And then Travis says, I wish I could see how King organizes his notes to keep track of his own universe continuity. I wonder if he has filing cabinets full. Now, I think that didn't he mention that a lot of times he would listen through it before he started writing again to kind of get readjusted?
He talks about it in
with
one
Frank,
of his intros.
Yeah, because of Frank Muller not passing away, but having an accident and being removed from being able to do books anymore. Because basically King was saying like Frank is the voice of the series even for me because I always go through and listen. So yeah, but who knows? I still think he's probably got some notes and stuff that he probably had some stuff to like reference and stuff. But who knows? It's tough to say. King is definitely a fly by the seat of his pants. So yeah, I definitely agree though. Too low, number 6. So number 5 is Misery, 1987.
deserves its spot. I don't even have to hear what he says for it. It deserves its spot there.
Yeah, and it does. It does feel like special. 'Cause I mean, ultimately here, like, right, we're crossing into the top 5 territory. So now you're talking about the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
And he says, novelist Paul Sheldon suffers a car accident on a snowy road and is rescued by a former nurse named Annie Wilkes, who just happens to be the absolute biggest fans of Sheldon's romance novels. Unfortunately for Annie, Paul has grown bored of his protagonist, Misery Chastain, and has killed her off in the most recent book. Unfortunately for Paul, Annie doesn't care for the ending and will do everything in her power to make sure Paul writes a better one. Originally intended as a Bachman book, Misery finds King unpacking toxic fandom decades before Twitter would allow Annie Wilkeses of the world to vent their frustrations around the clock, which is actually really true. Like, this book has actually become more relevant in the recent years than it's probably even than it was when it was published. Like, toxic fandom is rampant right now. So that's a good point, and maybe it would make a lot of people worth reading Misery even if they haven't. And he says King has said that Misery is not just about the expectations of his own fans, but about cocaine's hold over him throughout much of the 80s. The novel is perhaps the best example of King's ability to ratchet up tension with nary a ghost or goblin in sight, as Wilkes proves plenty terrifying in her all-too-human form. If you thought that Jack Nicholson's hefted the most iconic acts in King history, you haven't read Misery yet, which is somewhat crossing streams there, right? That's like
sledgehammer for
because it's
the novel for the movie.
Yeah, but Jack doesn't use an axe in the book, so
no, he doesn't.
She uses an axe in the book, but he uses a mallet in the book. So, like, I'm just saying it's crisscrossing the book and movie realm.
Don't cross streams.
Yeah, it's like, don't do that. You're crossing the streams there. Chris, this is from a writer here. Let me scroll back up and get it. It's Fox is his last name, but I'm forgetting his first name now. Steve Fox from Paste Magazine. So that's who did this list. So let's get on down here to the rest of the top 5 and see what. And you made a prediction. You said Carrie wouldn't make it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just overall. Okay, just wanted to keep track here because I was like in the middle of another thought that when you said that, so I want to make sure I clicked that because I don't remember what it was.
As much as I love Carrie, it doesn't get the love that it deserves.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So number 4 is Salem's Lot, 1975. Over first impression overall, Peter. I mean, you've read it, but like, is it top 4?
Yeah, it's his take on vampires is one of the best that he's done. He has such a good way of bringing the is it gothic? Is that the right way of saying it? Like the gothic feel of vampires to New England.
Yeah.
And especially being my first introduction into King.
Yeah.
I could see where the whole...
And that's true. I always forget that was the first one I put you into. So it's interesting to me, because not that it's not a good book, because obviously it's being ranked pretty highly here, but I wonder how much influence that has on you, the fact that it was your first. Like, you never forget your first, right? So I've never thought about that before now. But again, not that he's like ranking this down in like the 20th or anything.
No, yeah. For me, maybe a little high on the list. Maybe I'd put it a little bit lower, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. But still a really good novel. Really good characters. Obviously, Father Callahan, very, very important to me as a character. But the boy and the writer as well definitely made an imprint that King could write good characters.
Yeah.
Early on. So that's where a lot of things, my love for Carrie comes into play, is that was like 3rd or 4th novel that I ever read. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. It's the only one that I've ever sat down and read at one night.
Yeah.
All the way through. So, like that to me, with Salem's Lot being the first, I actually read this book. This is, before books on tape for me. So this goes back to having a paperback that you handed me and said, hey, check out Stephen King. And I'm like, I'm not too into horror. You're like, trust me. I've never steered you wrong yet. And you use this argument against me all the time with things. We were talking about it after we recorded our last episode about food. And you're like, I haven't steered you wrong yet, have I? And I go, no, you haven't. Food, movies, music, books, video games, none of it. Never had a bad suggestion from Tad.
Yeah.
Maybe I haven't enjoyed it as much as him, but I've never had one that's like, what the fuck was Tad thinking? Like, this is stupid. Never had that. I never had that. So for me, when you said, here, read this, this was one of the first ones that when you say, have I ever led you wrong? I wouldn't be here today recording this show if it wasn't for you showing me this novel. So
Yeah.
maybe it's a little bit more sentimental for me.
Yeah.
That I would still put it on my top 10 over something like The Long Walk, going back to our discussion about The Long Walk. But it's a take on vampires, and to me, vampires done right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the important thing, is that, even stuff like Blade that takes liberties with vampires, or like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Twilight, stuff that's a little bit more mainstream kind of stuff. What's the other one? Vampire Diaries is the newest one that my wife was addicted to for a while.
Yeah. Vampires have been bastardized quite poorly over the last number of decades.
This is classic vampires. This is they are not going to be easy. They are not going to fall in love with you. They are monsters. They are going to fucking kill you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where the horror aspect comes into this, and the taking over the town like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still creeps me out to think about.
Yeah, indeed. And that's why I'm still creeped out by small towns. He says, praised upon release as Peyton's Place meets Dracula, a reference that only half makes sense to most modern readers. Salem's Lot brought the vampire myth into the backyards of semi-rural America and found King at his most ruthless. Characters you come to love will meet grisly ends. Amusingly, the novel also features the first of King's many writer protagonists. King sold Salem's Lot for an outstanding sum of even by today's standards, let alone 1975's, and never let up from there. Last year's The Outsider even touches upon some of the same themes to a chilling effect. So yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, like Carrie was kind of like I think in a lot of ways, Carrie was kind of his like American Graffiti for George Lucas. It's fairly popular. It kind of put him on the map. But I feel like in a lot of ways, Salem's Lot is his Star Wars in terms of like the one that really put him like into the stratosphere. And not necessarily saying that Salem's Lot has the same like impact as Star Wars, but like in a way of like, there's like kind of middle success to like the point where you're like Steven Spielberg did like the Duel, right? The truck movie. But then there's a difference between that and then making Jaws. Yeah. Like it's just something that puts you into the realm of like all-time great. And I think Salem's Lot is definitely one that started to throw King up into the stratosphere. And obviously he would not let up with, what is it?
He still hasn't come down.
Yeah, exactly. It's like after that you're going to get The Shining. So, it's not going to let up on you at all. So, let's see. And then anything in the chat that I missed?
Check out what Chris wrote.
I don't like Salem's mainly because I dislike vampires in general. As for vampires, they're at least entertaining monsters. Yeah, and I feel like in a lot of ways, like vampires, and even werewolves and stuff. There's a lot of this stuff that's like kind of antiquated to modern thinking. I mean, like like they're I don't know, like not saying that they don't have a place in modern, in modern society, but I don't think they have the same effect that they would have had like when Bram Stoker wrote it, or when like werewolf movies or werewolf stories, like I think were way more prevalent at a different time when it was a little bit, I don't know, but I still enjoy it quite a bit. I read it not too long ago, like over the last couple of years, and I remember just thinking like, yeah, I really love this book, and it is so very quintessential King in a lot of ways. So that does next bring us to number 3, which is The Shining, 1977. Ooh. So the next book. What are you feeling there? Too low?
I kind of expected it to top the list a little bit.
Really?
Like I know The Stand, I know It, which should be 1 and 2 now that we're in the top 3.
Now that you've weeded out like that.
Yeah, now that
you get down to the nitty gritty, you can kind of.
There's really not much else that we can argue. If they don't have The Stand or It, that means they left The Stand or It off of a top 10 Stephen King novels.
Yeah.
And let's be perfectly honest. Would we even be reading the list if that happened?
Yeah, just to get pitchforks and torches and go Frankenstein.
Tad just wants to start a riot. That's all it is. But no, for me, it's tough. The question comes down to it's a triple threat match.
Yeah.
The Shining, It, and The Stand.
Yeah.
We got heavyweights on all 3 sides. Each one has their own attributes. Horror aspects for all 3.
Yeah.
Like we talked about earlier with It, there's more than just horror there. The same thing with The Shining. You get a lot with Jack and Danny and Wendy. That's just family. And living and coping with alcoholism is a big thing.
And abuse.
Big thing. The abuse. Also the pressure of, maybe not the modern man, but the modern man when it was written
Yeah.
to
Provide.
because that was, you were a failure if you didn't.
Yeah.
And you were a piece of shit, and you're my daughter, you get that a lot in Pet Sematary from that pissant the father-in-law.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're not good enough for my daughter, and the shit that men went through back then.
Yeah.
It's still prevalent today. You're not good enough for my daughter, but it was definitely worse back then because a lot of wives back then were not working.
Yeah.
It just was expected. So
yeah.
what Jack is going through, I got to provide. I have to do this. There's no other way.
Yeah.
Whereas today, my wife has a full-time job. I lost my job. This, where we used to work together. I lost my job. Was that over almost 2 years ago now?
Yeah.
And she supported the family while I found more work. Back then, what Jack goes through would have been me if times hadn't changed. So that aspect of it, beyond that, and you got the same thing in It. We already talked about that. You got the same thing in The Stand. Social dynamics. You got good versus evil, God versus Satan. All that kind of stuff. So it's it's almost interesting to see which people gravitate to which one.
Yeah.
Because for me, The Shining, a big part of it is, as a father, as a husband, it does draw to me.
Yeah.
It draws to me because I grew up being a rambunctious kid, riding my bike miles to go places with my friends and to do stuff. I didn't necessarily grow up in a small town. My wife grew up in a small town. We recently had a conversation about this. Less than, like thousands of people less. Whereas me and you grew up in one of the bigger cities in the state. Yeah. Here in Utah. But
even in the suburbs, just like we had like a field near, not like two fields, kitty corner of our neighborhood. And it's the point where like there was one that probably had like a 3-foot hill, and it was enough to like ride your bike up, but then we'd go and like ride in the field and pick up speed and then freaking jump off. And like, I think about that now and I'm like, I could have killed myself.
For sure. I remember I had the same thing near my house. My parents' house. There used to be a field there. Same thing. Guy decided to try and jump the canal there. And the ramp leading up to like the service road was too steep. So he went like straight up and came down. Broke his arm. Luckily, he was able to get up and walk home because the 3 8-year-olds, me and my 2 friends that were watching him, couldn't have done shit. Yeah. We could have maybe run for help. But, stuff like that, that's, and then I look at like where my wife grew up, this little tiny town in, middle of Utah, stuff like that. It still calls to me because of that. Is that, I don't necessarily feel like I grew up in a big town. I didn't grow up in Salt Lake City.
Yeah. Well, we were in like downtown.
We're not downtown. We're not even close to downtown.
We're not in an urban area. We're definitely more suburbs.
Suburbs. So a lot of like, Stranger Things. That's another one that calls to me. Stranger Things calls to me is that there is a metropolis that's nearby. There is a city that I could go to see big things to get the big city kind of feel. Not that Salt Lake City's exactly, on the world map. Let's be perfectly honest. But it's, it's not L.A. It's not New York. It's not even it's not like Seattle's bigger than Salt Lake City. So.
Yeah.
I still get that small town feel when I think about my hometown.
Yeah.
And everything, and you do the same. Like, like it doesn't feel like a huge town. So that childhood thing kind of calls to me. Maybe not as small as Derry, but still kind of, I'm more towards that than I am towards, some of these characters that are from, Los Angeles or New York or Miami. And it's like, yeah, no, I don't know what it's like to live in any of those towns.
Yeah, exactly. So he kind of starts off and he kind of goes through a lot of the iconic stuff. And he actually points out the fact of like a lot of the stuff that's like spoofed and known by a lot of people is more from the Kubrick stuff than it is from the King stuff. And he says, pushing past these iconic bits of pop culture reveals one of King's greatest accomplishments, a hauntingly compelling look at troubled man's descent into madness. King's novel is more sympathetic toward Jack Torrance, a recovering alcoholic writer. Sound familiar? Trying to improve his family's life by taking a job as a caretaker of a remote off-season resort with barely concealed violent history. The house wants Danny, Jack's gifted young son, and puts Torrance family through hell to get him. King infamously hates Kubrick's adaptation, and while it's hard to debate the film's quality or place in the horror movie pantheon, the novel is more nuanced and arguably scarier version of the story. Monsters and all. So yeah, and I agree. And that's what I keep trying to like get through people's heads is like, it's not that I hate Kubrick's adaptation. I love it and I respect it. It's probably top 5 horror movies of all time for me. But it doesn't mean that I don't want to see a version of Kings made in the modern day with like non-90s TV feel.
Yeah.
I want to see Kings adaptation done with the same quality as, Doctor Sleep that we're about to see in a month or so. Like, that's just what I want to see. And I even saw someone that's like, oh, I'm sure there's people like in Warner Brothers right now that are, once Doctor Sleep, if Doctor Sleep does well, they're going to like want to remake The Shining. And I respond, I'm like, it's not fucking remaking The Shining, dude. It's readapting King's novel and actually adapting King's novel and not creating your own thing out of it. Like, that's just, I don't see it as like, it should never be seen as a slight against Kubrick's movie, in my opinion, to readapt The Shining. But no, the novel overall, I agree. I think 3 is, it's definitely one that is in the top pantheon for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely fits. So next up, number 2. And
I'm going to call it. It's number 2.
It is indeed It.
Yep.
1986. Says King remains and has always been obsessed with the turbulent years of early adolescence. The titular It, on the other hand, is probably King's most endearing and iconic monster. An interdimensional being of pure malevolence, an alien mindset that seems so much simpler on the surface, an evil clown that kills kids. That could at least be dealt with in a way that's acceptable to adults. Fighting the actual evil of It is a much trickier proposition, one that depends on a perfect blend of mysticism and childhood faith necessary to overcome It's greatest weapon, fear, and the ability to make an entire town forget the atrocities it commits and allows. The ending of It is occasionally cited as a weak point, but it's a big fat novel that is far more about the journey, both being in the 50s and the 80s, and the horrifying visions suffered along the way, which, yeah, I agree. I don't think it's as much about the end as it is about the journey with this one.
For sure.
But I think that, like, ultimately, I agree. Like, this definitely, again, it's just one of those like top pantheon, right? You're talking top 3 now.
Yeah.
You're talking about these are ultimately the you're talking your Mount Rushmore, right? And I guess including you'd have to include number 4 as well, which in this case is Salem's Lot, which could be debated. But ultimately, when you get into your top 3, yeah, and I think It is definitely there. And I think for me, where number 2 and obviously number 1, where those come in for me to judge is like reread. Like for me, I don't find myself wanting to reread The Shining as much as I do like It
in The Stand.
So like there's just part of me that's like, if nothing else, that might be my way to kind of like break the tie a little bit and figure it out. And yeah, so I agree with it. And then, yeah, as obviously we can just get to it. Number 1 is The Stand. And it's the same for me with The Stand. I mean, I read The Stand pretty much yearly. This year is second time now that I haven't read it in a yearly fashion, because I want to get back on my timeline that I was, because I kind of broke my timeline a little bit. But like for me, I read The Stand generally once a year, with a few exceptions. It doesn't have the same kind of repeat value. Not that I don't want to read it, because I do, and I always enjoy it when I go back to it, but I don't feel drawn to it every year like I do The Stand. Like The Stand isn't for me like this thing where I'm just like, Tad reads it once a year, period. No, it's always just this thing where usually in the early summer, which is about when the book starts, I just start to get kind of a freaking hankering for it. I get a draw where it's just like, I want to go visit those characters again.
Yeah. And see, that's surprising, because it's the exact opposite for me. It's It that usually
you
calls to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you've read It easily more than I have. You go through it like for every one time I read it, you've probably read it 2 or 3 times.
I really do. I honestly think that if I make a top 10 list, it's going to be number 1. Stand's going to be a close second, but The Stand for me is interesting. I stumble across The Stand.
Yeah,
it's something that comes up with The Dark Tower, Wizard and Glass, makes me want it. And it's always the same thing. I hit Wizard and Glass, they land in Kansas, and I want The Stand.
Yeah, but you don't want to interrupt.
But I'm not going to interrupt my cycle to go get it. So I have to go through 5, 6, 7, and even sometimes 8 before I'll come back to The Stand. And sometimes in between there, I'll finish book 4, and then I'll jump over and read The Institute.
Yeah.
Or I'll jump over and read, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, or Helter Skelter, or any of those non-Stephen King novels that you've turned me on to. A lot of true crime
or
history stuff.
Yeah.
The MacArthur book was one that you turned me on to. Really cool book about Douglas MacArthur.
Yeah.
Not just during World War II, but post World War II as well, with rebuilding Japan and everything like that, with what he did in his career.
Yeah.
That was really cool. That interrupted a cycle that came in between 2 Dark Tower books. But then at the end of the Dark Tower, it's like it's part of the Dark Towers to go back and read the Stand, because it's Flag, and Flag's story, the way it ends in the Dark Tower, that's not the full story. I don't get everything, so I'm left wanting it, so it pulls me into that. So I probably read the Stand as often as I read the Dark Tower, which is once a year. I've read the Dark Tower now once a year ever since we started. No, ever since you got me reading it.
Oh, really? And see, I don't read the Dark Tower once a year. I find that it's probably every other year, or maybe every third year, depending on how things fall. But I feel like that by that point, I'm like starving for Dark Tower. But yeah, in general, for me, the Dark Tower, because it is just such a huge journey and there's so much in it that like I don't feel myself drawn once a year. But that's just me. It just in terms of the way, I guess, like. I don't know, but yeah, it's definitely one I could easily read once a year, and the same with it, probably could too. But yeah, it just doesn't draw me in as much. So the Stand, he says, the Stand includes as much horror as any of King's other novels, spurred by a viral outbreak that kills 99.4% of the population. World-ending scenarios were on everyone's minds in the 70s and 80s. As global tensions escalated and means of mass destruction proliferated. King isn't content to simply exploring the post-pandemic wastelands, though. The Stand is his most epic standoff between good and evil. The latter concept embodied by Randall Flagg, a reoccurring antagonist of King's, who's become essential to the sprawling Dark Tower saga. Knowledge of that series isn't necessary to undertake the Stand. Just a month or so of dedicated reading time and a hearty resistance to nightmares. So I for me, I agree. Like Stand for me is going to be number one. Like I think I've made no qualms about it. For me, like that's just, it is my favorite, because again, even if I counted Dark Tower as a singular, it's probably going to be number 2 to the Stand. There's just something about the Stand that is just so, like, again, I don't know what it is, and and the Dark Tower is very, very close to it, because like for the Stand, there's just like this weird, it just feels like I'm going back to visit these friends again. You know, and like there's always like small things that I'll forget that like will kind of surprise me a little bit, or weird things that like I remember, but I remember incorrectly, so I'm like expecting something, but then it doesn't happen.
One that always gets me. Do you remember the story that Stu tells Fran in the Stand about meeting a rock star, a dead rock star?
It's
every single time I think of the wrong rock star.
Yeah, you think of Elvis.
I've told you this before.
Yeah.
Every single time I think of Elvis, it's Jim Morrison.
Yeah.
Every single time I do it.
Yeah.
So it's really funny that you mentioned, you remembering things incorrectly. That's one that I always do. It's like he's talking about Elvis. He's talking about Elvis.
Yeah.
Jim Morrison from The Doors. Fuck. That's right.
Yeah. There's small things that'll throw me off, but ultimately for me, the Stand is. I believe it fits at number 1. You said you would probably put it at number 1.
Number 2.
Or
it
is number 1.
It at number 1, Stand at number 2 for me, probably.
Okay.
Chris says in the chat, The Stand, in quotes, or better known as, quote, Randy, the story of a super charming guy, end quote. And then Travis says The Stand, a.k.a. for Flag's a jolly good fellow. And then Chris says, is number 1 because we all love the Randy man. Travis says, Peter's hinting at his Flag crush again. And Chris says, especially Peter. And Travis says, especially Peter. And I told him to stop it. No, guys, no.
And Chris just threw an emoji on there for you, I see. Don't deny it. And a little,
no.
And it's like one of those stupid, like, melted marshmallow emojis, too. Like, the way I'm seeing it on my side. Like, it's like the way YouTube's doing it. Like, you ever seen those ones?
Yeah.
They're not full round. Like, the bottom's, like, squished out. Like,
it's like it hit the ground.
Yeah, it's like they splattered a little bit on the bottom.
That would bring me so much joy to splatter emojis.
Peter, you're just going to start a comedic career where you make, pulpy emojis that you can smash with a hammer, like Gallagher.
That'd be fun.
So overall, what do you think of the list? I mean, you said there's a couple things you didn't agree with.
Yeah, not bad. But
overall, it's definitely not one, because I feel like sometimes we get like lists, and there's times I skip a lot of them that'll come out that I feel like people just put shit in certain places just to piss people off and cause conversation and cause clicks. usually that makes it to where I won't cover it in our thing. I mean, we did cover that one last time of the person with like the hopes and letdowns of the Dark Tower series, but that was Dark Tower. I was going to cover that, but I feel like in general, and maybe that wasn't that way, but I feel like sometimes you can get clickbaity type shit that goes on, and I'm generally not going to let those in. But I feel like this is a pretty straight up list and a pretty good list overall. But yeah, I'm not going to throw out the challenge now that we're going to do a top 10, but I think that we should file that away in our heads for upcoming thing to do is to come up with top 10s for Stephen King novels. Okay, so next up is the next story here is every Stephen King movie coming after It Chapter 2. This is by Kara Hedish from Screen Rant on September 5th, 2019. And this is where I told you I'm going to basically get a tracking board, our big board, as it were. I'm going to build off of this, but I'll look at it the way that Kara here did it. First of all, you want to enjoy the cover photo here. It's a good one, yeah.
Yeah.
Which one's worse?
Pennywise.
Yeah? God, that fucking Salem's Lot ghoul is one that...
That's a vampire.
It just... Yeah, there's something about it that gives me the heebie-jeebies. Okay, so let's jump into the list here. I'll pull up the thing on here. So she has it broken out in films in development. In the Tall Grass, October 4th, 2019. Dr. Sleep, November 8th, 2019. And then the rest of these are going to be TBA on the dates. So the other thing I want to do is with our list is as dates get hammered down, I'm going to add it to the list. So we're literally going to have this a list very similar to this at all times that we could just keep real time. So TBA ones are Mile 81, Salem's Lot, The Long Walk, Rest Stop, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. Which was the one that we mentioned in that list that you weren't sure about? Leesy's Story.
Yeah, Leesy's Story.
So films in early development, Firestarter, The Tommyknockers, From a Buick-8, Drunken Fireworks. Miniseries in development, Castle Rock Season 2, Mr. Mercedes Season 3, Leesy's Story, so there's your answer on that one.
Yep.
The Outsider, The Dark Tower series, and The Stand. So... That's kind of where we're at right now.
I feel like that's missing some.
Yeah?
I don't know why.
I kind of felt like it too. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to keep a version of this and just try to keep it current as we see things. And like every once in a while,
Didn't they already buy the newest novel? I just spaced on
The Institute?
The Institute.
Well, it's funny you should ask. The next article here we have. Dave,
I'm just a psychic bitch. That's what I am. Jesus Christ.
David E. Kelly, Jack Bender, developing Stephen King's The Institute as a limited series. This is by Will Thorne from Variety on September 10th, 2019.
I love that guy's hair. The one on the right.
Oh, yeah.
Nice glasses, too.
So David E. Kelly, fresh off his stint on Big Little Lies and then Lost director Jack Bender, are teaming up to bring Stephen King's latest novel, The Institute, to the screen. Spyglass has won the rights for the book and plans to adapt it in a limited series with Kelly in place to write and executive produce, and Bender set to serve as director and executive producer. The duo previously worked together on Mr. Mercedes, Audience Network adaptation of King's Bill Hodges trilogy, which has been renewed for a third season. And then here's a quote here. The Institute, which hit shelves today, it goes on to give a little bit of a premise, but I'm actually going to skip it because it actually, I don't think it's spoilery, but it gives something away from the very early in the novel that I was like, I enjoyed being surprised by a little bit, so I'm not going to go into it. I feel like we've kind of covered a little bit about the basics of what the story of the Institute is, but I'm not going to get the one from the article here. I don't like what they tipped a hand on something. Goes on here, a quote, having the opportunity to work on a new brilliant book by Stephen King is an absolute privilege, Whitney said. We are thrilled to collaborate with this dream team, including the incomparable David E. Kelly and Jack Bender, the architects behind the project, whose extensive directing and executive producing credits speak for themselves. After such a competitive pursuit, we have big plans for the Institute here at Spyglass. Kelly is currently developing the limited series The Undoing, starring Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant for HBO, and is writing and executive producing the adaptation of Michael Connelly's bestseller The Lincoln Lawyer for CBS. Bender, known for directing episodes of shows such as Game of Thrones and The Sopranos, is already working on another King project as the executive producer on HBO's upcoming The Outsider, based on the prolific author's 2018 novel. He was also executive producer on Under the Dome for CBS of King's 2009 novel. So now that we have that tuckered away.
Mhm.
Here's our big board, and as it will look. I separated film. I wanted to put film in one thing because film in early development doesn't make a sense to me to separate like she did in her article. So this is going to be our board here. So I threw the Institute down there on miniseries. And like I said, as time goes, and we maybe get news articles saying like, hey, Mile 81 comes out blank, or Salem's Lot comes out blank, like we'll just go in and fill this out. How much more gets added to the list? Really, who knows? Because,
Yeah.
I mean, good God. Who knows how much there is left to have. So yeah, that's our tracking board. So now we're going to get into some of the kind of bigger news a little bit. It's all happened. Again, I take all this chronologically. The first one I actually don't have a slide for, but it's actually just a confirmation. Whoopi Goldberg confirms that she is playing Mother Abigail in The Stand. Basically, The View, King was on The View to promote the Institute and It Chapter 2. And while he was there, Whoopi Goldberg basically was able to confirm the early reports that she was going to be in it and be playing Mother Abigail. Apparently, she kind of made it sound like she was even maybe trying to play that role back in the 90s.
Really?
And wasn't able to. So, yeah, she definitely was very thankful to King and stuff, and kind of talked about some of the stuff we've already talked about. Things such as, like King's writing the end episode and stuff like that. But overall, I think it's really cool to finally confirm and lock her down, because that whole first wave of casting, she was like the one that didn't get confirmed by Josh Boone. He confirmed I can't remember. There was a handful of people. James Marsden was one of them. He went through and confirmed all, but Whoopi Goldberg was the one that didn't confirm. So it was kind of like, wait, is this all bullshit? Let's see. Anything in the chat here? Looks like there's a little bit of shenanigans.
Chris just booed Mother Abigail.
Let's see. Ryan says at least Dark Tower made the list. Travis, true. I doubt it ever makes many lists when people talk about King novels. Yeah, and then talking about people's list, but yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. Yeah, but there's actually some other news on the front of The Stand here.
Travis, get out of here with that dad joke. Come on.
Whoopi Abigail.
Whoopi Abigail.
We now have our hero for The Stand. Alexander Skarsgård to be playing Randall Flagg in The Stand for CBS All Access.
Not a hero. Stop it.
Dude, I am so fucking excited about this. Jeff Snyder from Collider. This is from September 11th, 2019. First of all, I'll just even say before we dive into it, Alexander Skarsgård, for me, I fell in love with him with Generation Kill, in which he plays basically co-leads with the actor that played Eddie, adult Eddie, in It Chapter 2, which a lot of people are fairly fond of his performance as Eddie. But these two were basically the two main people in Generation Kill. So I loved him from that. And obviously the last name is somewhat familiar to us.
Wonder where I've heard it.
Yeah, indeed. So let's jump into it here. Collider has exclusively learned that on the heels of winning an Emmy as Golden Globe and SAG Award for his menacing turn in HBO's Big Little Lies, Alexander Skarsgård is preparing to play the personification of evil, the Man in Black himself, Mr. Randall Flagg. So that's all I really have from them. So this is kind of a weird one, because I wanted to go to them because they had the exclusive on it, and there's a couple different articles that brought in different little aspects of it that I wanted to grab. So the next little bit I took from Cinema Blend by Adrian Jones, and it says, obviously Alexander Skarsgård is an old hand at playing supernatural bad guys. He spent 7 seasons playing a 1,000-year-old vampire Eric Northman on HBO's fanatical drama True Blood, where he excelled at being creepy, intimidating, charismatic, calculating, and self-interested, but still kind of hot, mostly because he wasn't 100% evil. Have you seen True Blood?
No.
Okay, that's one of those shows where I'm I've never seen, but I didn't know. There's a number of shows you've gotten into over the years that I was never really into, so I wasn't sure if this is one of them or not.
You got to remember that it's HBO.
Oh, yeah.
HBO, Game of Thrones is where I started with HBO.
Oh, okay.
So anything before that, anything really after that.
I actually didn't know True Blood was HBO until this.
Yeah.
For some reason, I always thought that was just cable, a cable channel. I would have said TNT or I don't know.
The people
Spike.
the people that I knew that liked True Blood were the kind of people who liked maybe not Twilight, but similar enough things to it that made me go, oh, this is a series that I'm not going to enjoy.
And then Adrian says here, Skarsgård has also recently become known for playing another very bad dude. His role as a menacing and abusive Perry Wright in HBO's Big Little Lies won an actor an Emmy, SAG Award, and Golden Globe. Clearly, Alexander Skarsgård is known for has known what he's doing when it comes to men who you should really stay far away from, and maybe just go ahead and call the police anyway to be safe. And then the last little chunk here is from Slash Film, and it's Chris Evangelista. And in his article he says, here's how King describes Flag in The Stand, and this is a quote here. Obviously, it says he looks like anybody you see on the street, but when he grins, birds fall dead from telephone lines. The grass yellows up and dies where he spits. He's always outside. He came out of time. He has a name of 1,000 demons. Jesus knocked him into the herd of pigs once. His name is Legion. He's afraid of us. He knows magic. He can call the wolves and live in the crows. He's the king of nowhere. So that's an awesome little heavy metal quote there. And then they mention here in the Slash Film article, Skarsgård can bring great intensity to his roles. He's seen most recently in Silent Turn in the Hold the Dark for a great example of this. His casting here makes sense. It's somewhat fascinating that two of Stephen King's most notorious baddies, Pennywise and Randall Flagg, will now be played by two of the Skarsgård brothers. Now some King adaptation needs to throw their father Stellan Skarsgård a bone, which I'm totally for. And what would you see Stellan Skarsgård as?
That's the guy that played
Selvig
in Avengers.
Yeah.
Thor.
Yeah. Anything off the top of your head that you'd be like, he should do that?
Give me a second.
Let's look at the old board here. He could play something in Salem's Lot. One of the maybe.
He should be the Outsider season 3 is doing the book 2, right?
Mr.
He should be the fucking convict.
Mr. Mercedes.
Yeah, what I say, the Outsider.
The Outsider.
No,
yeah.
Mr. Mercedes season 3 is doing book 2, where it's the convict that comes back for the novels.
Oh.
He should absolutely be the bad guy in that. He's the perfect age for been in prison for murder for years.
Yeah.
He could be able to get out.
Unfortunately, that's already filmed though.
Fuck.
Now Travis read my mind. Barlow. He could.
Oh shit.
I know that's just a little part there, but yeah, I wanted to at least throw it out there because Stellan is obviously a great actor, and two of his sons now are basically, yeah. I mean, can you argue that there's more iconic two King like baddies than Pennywise?
We just did the top
Flagg?
10 novels. There's a reason there's the two.
Yeah. I'm excited by this, dude. I love Alexander. What I've seen him in. Unfortunately, he did that Tarzan movie where he played Tarzan. He's also though in King Kong versus Godzilla upcoming in the future, so we'll be able to see him in that. But yeah, he's and I mean just the picture we got here of him, I feel like does a really good job of maybe conveying what he can portray.
The Man in Black.
Yeah, a lot of people mentioned on our Twitter with True Blood, as I mentioned, things like being a brother of Pennywise, and obviously Generation Kill is my experiences with him. But a lot of people brought up True Blood, so apparently that's a fairly sizable role that left an impact on a lot of people. So,
well, even the article brought it up. So
yeah, exactly. So it's one that's been brought up. So I think that's definitely one that's a good one. But yeah, I'm excited. So now we basically have our two polar forces, right? We have Mother Abigail and we have Randall Flagg. So now there's actually I kind of jumped to some of these other articles. And the reason being is there actually was more in this Collider article because they also dropped some other castings from The Stand. So let me read this here. So Stephen King was a guest on ABC's The View Wednesday morning when he promoted his new book, The Institute, as well as his new movie, It Chapter 2. He also announced 4 new cast members for the CBS All Access adaptation of The Stand. So let's go ahead and jump into it here. We got this Jovan Adepo, and he is most recently Overlord. He was the lead character, I believe, in Overlord. What any thoughts? You don't need to necessarily predict, but obviously it's probably someone that's going to be changed from a white character because there's like two black characters in the whole thing, and he doesn't look Judge Ferris's age.
I wouldn't say no to him being Larry.
You, sir, are a winner. He is playing Larry Underwood.
I could definitely see him being, especially if you make it the Stand modern.
Yeah.
Make him a hip hop, sensation,
Yeah.
smooth, kind of like an Usher type, love song kind of guy.
Yeah.
And everything. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, there was part of me that cringed a tiny bit just because of flashbacks of dealing with the Roland conversation here. But I just, hopefully, our audience is, I don't know, I guess, in the mind enough to think that, like, oh, there's nothing wrong with this, because I don't really think that there is. I don't think that it changes anything about Larry necessarily to, make him black.
Grew up in New York. Grew up to a single mother.
Wasn't he kind of in the projects area a little bit too? He wasn't in a nice part of New York necessarily.
No, not a nice part. I mean, he talks about the vandalism of his building when he comes back, that both the lions have been destroyed. The only thing that's left is one paw from one of them. Talks about they used to get in trouble, but never too much trouble like some of the other kids in the neighborhood. Yeah. No, I mean it's perfect to change that. The only thing I would probably change then is maybe make him from Harlem. Yeah. Because, that's perfect. Even if it's just a little bit different part of New York, it's still New York. Yeah. And he'd still be in Harlem's on Manhattan, right? It's one of the 5 boroughs of Manhattan.
I think so, yeah.
So it's fine. There's nothing lost with this.
And in the picture I grabbed on the right, I grabbed just because scared face, I guess.
Lincoln Tunnel holding a rifle.
Yeah, exactly. If only he was wearing 101st Airborne uniform
Eagles.
Along with the training, that would probably maybe help him a little bit. So I'm excited about that one. And next up is we actually know this guy, Owen Teague.
That's it's not Belch. It's Patrick Hockstetter.
Hockstetter, yes, indeed.
Not Trash Can Man.
So a King alum. No, not Trashy.
He's too young. Hold on. Too younger. Harold.
2 for 2, sir. So ultimately, and you know what? I thought about it. I'm like, okay, so they're kind of giving up the whole overweight thing. I think I'm okay with that because like how much it asks an actor, right? Because he loses a bunch of weight in the book. That asks a lot of an actor to like put on 60, 70 pounds and then lose it.
Unless you're Christian Bale.
Yeah, but that's just a lot. That's a huge ask, I think, in general.
Just a freak.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could theoretically film, but no. But if it's a series, though, it's not like a movie. Like you can't really film the later stuff first because it's not a movie. Like you're gonna film shit episode by episode. So yeah, you'd literally be asking an actor like, "Hey, put on 60 pounds," and then, "Hey, lose that 60 pounds." Like
it wouldn't be hard to make him look a little bit chubby, but he doesn't have to be, huge.
Yeah,
Harold wasn't huge.
No,
he was just a little bit overweight.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be necessarily hard to make that happen. Also, I think one of the aspects that you could do is focus on the Acme side of things.
Yeah.
Versus the weight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you could definitely do a lot. And honestly, like I love the picture on the left is one I found because I feel like that just screams Harold to me. Like it just feels like
the jean jacket is so pretentious.
Yeah,
for Harold.
And honestly, I think just make him up just like that versus having like the 1980s look that he had as Patrick Hockstetter. But I feel like he just kind of has that look where, because even in that face there, I feel like you can kind of get like some aspect of like looking down on someone a little bit, like where it's like explaining something to someone with the upturned hand, where it's just like, dude, do you not fucking get this? Like, how dumb are you? Like I just feel like he could really pull it off.
He's also a really good actor. I mean, he played Patrick Hockstetter really well. So I'm excited to see him play Harold because Harold's, let's be perfectly honest, Harold's a pivotal part of the series.
Oh yeah, I think we mentioned that some episodes back where we were kind of naming what are the like most crucial parts of the thing, and when we talked, it was the casting. We talked about what have we had that has not been cast that is important, and I think Harold is one that we actually came to as like probably one of the top roles because it's like he's a sizable portion of the book
for sure.
And we have Nadine already, so that's pretty cool. Okay, so next up we have 4. Let's get over to number 3 real quick, and that one, find my mouse here, is this gentleman here, Brad William Hankey. I guess is maybe how you'd say it. Any thoughts there? I
Ralph?
mean, oh, that's actually good now that I look at it. But no, that is unfortunately not.
Okay. He's not going to be Lloyd.
No.
Not yet old enough to be Glenn.
We already have Glenn.
Oh, do we?
Remember in the original?
No.
It's, Greg Kinnear, which is like the most like weird because he's not that old. Like he's like a dude in his like 50s, but like
right. I don't remember who we have casted
Okay.
aside from Mother Abigail.
I didn't do an overall, but we had Marsden is Stu, the guy that played Cyclops, and he's the lead in Westworld.
And It Chapter 2.
What?
Isn't
No.
Oh no, I'm thinking of what's his name? The actor that played Bill in It Chapter 2.
Oh,
Xavier in the new movies.
Yeah, I'm blanking on his name right now.
Marsden?
No. God damn. Anyone in the chat?
James
McAvoy.
Thank you.
Yeah. The one that is in Band of Brothers for like
Yes.
20 seconds before he gets fucking blown away and killed. And then, yeah, that's, yeah. No, so, any other guesses here? Or you just want to,
No, go ahead.
okay. Tom Cullen.
Damn it. Okay.
It's definitely not exactly what I thought for Tom. But the problem is that the original series is so polluted my mind that like whatever. But I could totally see this though because I feel like Tom is
Yeah.
definitely a bigger. You
Yeah.
know, like
Oh, yeah.
not that he's like fat necessarily, but like he's a big dude, and maybe even like to the point where it's like you're kind of scared because he doesn't necessarily have a full mind. To have a body like that is
Yeah.
like could be dangerous. you
Going
know?
back one real fast, Travis makes a very good point. Harold equals hipster douchebag.
Oh yeah, which
That would be perfect for
Yeah.
making it modern.
yeah, and honestly, wasn't Harold that anyway? Really?
Basically, he was, yeah.
You just hadn't coined the term in that way
Yeah.
for that book. So yeah, so we got Tom Cullen. We also have we have Nick, we have Nadine already. I should have had like a recap. We'll do that next episode, next roundtable. I'll go through and I'll make
Okay.
like a thing where we'll I'll even do side by sides of old person versus new person.
Okay.
So yeah, that's our Tom Cullen. I actually was gonna take down some stuff on some of these people, but I actually forgot, so we'll have to skip that. Maybe have that for next time. And then last up is Daniel Sanjata, and this is actually one I'm not gonna make you guess because it is unknown. It is someone named Cobb. So I don't know.
All right.
I really don't know what to. Yeah, they just said what does it say here? And Daniel as Cobb. Yeah, it doesn't even point out the fact that there is no Cobb in the book. So I don't know what role he would play. I mean, I don't know which side of the divide he would be. These are just the pictures I found of him. They're both kind of more professional. I mean, he could very well turn out to be a Lloydish type character.
He
and-
also could very well be a military guy.
yeah, he could.
I mean, he could be the younger commanding officer. I mean, Ed Harris plays the older one in the original series.
yeah,
He could very well play the younger one that takes over for him when Ed Harris's character goes down, cleans up the guy with the soup and...
yeah. But I thought about that, but like I'm trying not to let the costumes here like I guess ruin like pollute my mind. Like you could easily put this guy in fucking rags and dirty him up and stuff, and he can end up being like just
A Lloyd, yeah.
Lloyd or Rat Man type, like just some like scrangly motherfucker, But most of what I found is he's played a lot of like law enforcement professional types,
Mhm.
so. Hard to say exactly. Travis in the chat says they probably combined some characters, which is definitely true. But yeah, so we've added someone to the cast that we're not super sure of. But yeah, that is the big news. We've got our flag. We have confirmed our Mother Abigail, and then added
Larry.
some of the biggest characters. I think we might have we don't have Ralph yet.
That's why I was
And
thinking...
we have
Ralph.
Glenn. So yeah, like of your we have Franny as well. So we have Nadine. We don't have Lloyd yet. We don't have Trashy. We don't have really anyone from the earlier. We still have Marilyn Manson floating out there in terms of like we don't have anything from like the early stages of like Campion. We don't
Mhm.
have. I mean, there's a number of roles still that are somewhat critical, but not like major roles. But we filled out a number of the big roles here, and I have to say, Josh Boone has been hyping what his mind had for the cast as being a pretty stellar cast, and so far, I would say he's following
For
through
sure.
with that promise. So, Yeah, really cool. So next up is the next story here, and it's Andy Machete details the supercut of It Chapter 1 and 2. I love this picture, by the way. This is by Michael Rothman from Consequence of Sound on September 11th, 2019. It says, prior to the release of It Chapter 2, the director Andy Machete teased a multitude of cuts involving both films, particularly an extensive edit that combines both movies. Now, in a new interview with Consequence of Sound, the blockbuster filmmaker details what fans might expect to see in the near future and confirms at least one essential scene. And this is a quote from Machete. He says, "We'll call it a supercut." Machete exclaims, "It's in the early stages, and we're still discussing the format. It won't be intertwined or anything like it was in the book, but it will contain all the scenes that were deleted from both movies for pacing reasons, and we'll hopefully have new material, which is stuff that I have not shot yet, which is interesting."
Oh,
so I think that obviously would come into like getting Warner Brothers to pay for further filming, obviously. But what's your thought process on that in terms of like not intercutting? Like Godfather, we've talked about already, right? The whole Godfather TV thing where they edited it all chronologically. Like, would you want to see it cut like the book where it just cuts back and forth, or would you rather just keep it where it's like It Chapter 1, It Chapter 2 with deleted scenes paired up back to back?
Where there's not an end credits for Chapter 1.
Yeah.
It's just one 7-hour movie.
Yeah, just merges straight in.
Yeah, I want that.
Versus intercut. Yeah, because I think intercut, like, you're always in a danger because when you film a movie, there's like pacing things, there's like setup and payoff things, and you just like muddy those waters when you like start crisscross cutting into like two different movies together. So yeah, and he says on the subject of reshoots, he says, quote, "Yes, but it's under discussion. We're just toying with the idea with the studio, but we're not there yet. But it would be great. Imagine having in front of you two movies, seeing them as a whole, which is something that I never did yet. And recalibrating things and saying, okay, what would be really great? Seeing Richie fly in the Macroverse or whatever," which is an interesting thing to say there. Machete also confirms an original sequence of Pennywise the Dancing Clown was shot and scrapped. Quote, "There's a scene that we shot that's in the 1600s, he said. I decided not to put it in the film because it was a little confusing. The problem is that people sometimes want to know a little bit more, but if you give it to them, if you give them too much, then they'll be disappointed. It's like a magic trick in that way." So that's interesting because I think there's been rumors for a long while that we might get one of those early settler era Pennywise things. And then another one here, quote, "I think if you go back to the book, something similar happens, he continues. Stephen King remains very cryptic about the other side, the origins of Pennywise, and he teases you with Robert Gray and this and that and the turtle, and at the end he opens a curtain and shows you a lot about the other side, the Macroverse, but I learned from that and that sometimes it's better to keep things cryptic and generate mystery. It's a balance. So yeah, that's a scene I love, but I will have to see how it can be reorchestrated into the big cut if it happens." Then it goes on here and says, as for whether he thinks there's enough in that origin for another chapter, he says it's too soon to tell, he admitted. Of course, the universe and the cosmology of the story is so rich. Stephen King use that mythology as a catalyst for the story of the Losers Club and Pennywise, and it really has outstanding events in the past that are so awesome, like the story of Bob Gray. That's a huge mystery there. Bob Gray, who was a clown, Bob Gray, who became Pennywise. Why did it take that, or this incarnation? How did it happen? There's a lot of questions there. It's very intriguing to me. Also intriguing is one deleted scene involving Matra and the turtle, the cosmic force playing a pivotal role in Stephen King's 1986 novel. While the turtle was referenced throughout both films, it never makes an actual appearance. However, that wasn't always the case, and Machete describes the scene involving James McAvoy that is included at the end. It goes without saying, beware of spoilers. So I guess there is some slight spoilers here. I guess let me see if I can alter a little bit. I guess he says so spoilers, skip ahead like 40 seconds if you haven't seen the movie. When you see McAvoy confronting his fears in the flooded basement, Machete paints the picture, and he kills the notion of the guilt by killing himself as a kid. He jumps back into the water. He's lost there, and there's no way out, and suddenly the eyes of Pennywise Bill, the kid, comes out of the dark, but it's not Pennywise, it's a turtle that's swimming by him, and he views the turtle and is sort of fascinated, like, what is this thing? And then very soon after, the kid is swimming after it, so McAvoy follows him toward the light, and he merges back in the cavern. So sounds like that's something, which is interesting for sure. And then it goes on here and says it's a scene that's connected to chapter 1. He continues when you see the kids in the quarry and they're splashing around, and one of them says there's something in the water. What is it? A turtle? And they all go into the water. So this is a continuation of that scene. It's a beautiful scene, but I had to leave it out for pacing reasons. It's very emotional, but it would not be the right moment where things had to be moving faster. And he asked if it'd be going into the forthcoming supercut, and then he jokes back, "What do you think?" So. Being a little bit coy there, and then he says, as for why the final scene was cut, Machete admits that he wanted to focus on the human drama. He argues, "I didn't want to run the risk of making this a fantasy movie, so for me that was always a question. How much of the other things should we view? I didn't want to go the route of the Dark Tower, where the fantasy element is very, very present." So I guess that's kind of, which is an interesting way to think about it. Cause it is like, it has its moments of kind of into the larger universe, but really the majority of it is a very human,
very grounded story,
very grounded in terms of like, it's about like the humans. It's not about the macro crazy stuff. Like, whereas Dark Tower obviously gets way more into the macro crazy stuff than it does. So that's kind of cool. And I also love that Machete is referencing Dark Tower.
For sure.
That's fun. Okay, so that is it for our normal section. So I guess at this point now we're moving into the Palaver section. So what I guess I'll say is, if you haven't seen It Chapter 2, now's the point to probably just peace out from the episode. Give us a pause and then go see the movie. And then once you're done, come on back. We got a number of things to talk about here for It Chapter 2, but we didn't want to, I don't know, it's been a couple weeks now, but we didn't want to step on people's toes too much. So if you haven't seen it, stop listening now and come back to us after you've seen it. We will now start into the discussion. So I have a little slide here. Reactions. Okay, so let me even just start just prefacing a little bit this. Do you think that it could be debated that It is King's most iconic work? Oh, like overall, in terms of, like you said earlier, random person on the street, hey, do you know Stephen King? You know, do you think that there's anything that people would say like, okay, because I agree. I think that's just like one of those things you could just say, and you could put a flag in and say there may be like better books in some people's views. There may be ones that are like in the King realm is more whatever, but like in your wide world of everything, I just don't know that it can be beat. But I brought this up on Twitter. I wanted to bring up last time, but we were running long. And I said, and I threw it out there, and I said, I asked Twitter, I said, so if you were to pair up two properties of King's to try to eclipse its iconic nature, do you think that you could find two that would eclipse it in the public perception? And if so, which two would those be?
I don't think there is.
No?
As much as I want to say like Dark Tower and The Stand, because let's be perfectly honest, those would go really well together.
Yeah. Oh, and it doesn't have to be like ones that actually merge. I'm just saying, like, let's just say you took like, let's say iconicness was like like money. Let's just say you the two came together and pooled their money. Would there be any that could beat it? Not necessarily they had to be a combined story necessarily.
I'd still say no. Dark Tower has the following for the books, nothing for movies.
Okay.
The Shining has the following of the movie, but we've gone over that several times now, that's not King. It's an adaptation of King's work, but it's not true, adaptation like we've talked about.
But
with redoing it.
Remember, though, we're just talking wide world here. So the Shining, the movie and the book kind of become merged into one.
A lot of people still don't know that The Shining is a King novel. It's a Kubrick film. So it goes back to the Shawshank Redemption and Green Mile argument. Yeah, you walk up to someone and say, "Hey, have you ever seen anything, adaptation from Stephen King?" "No, I don't like horror." "Have you ever seen Shawshank Redemption or Green Mile?" "Yeah, I love those movies. Those were King stories." "Oh, really?" So known and being able to pass Pennywise alone, not even the story of it, just Pennywise? No. There's nothing that King has done that can pass that.
Okay, so the two that I put together is probably, in my view, probably the strongest possibility is The Shining is one. Again, to the points I just pointed out, like it ultimately is like, because you're talking the wide world, you don't have that demarcation between the book and the movie, so it kind of just becomes one thing. The other one I throw in there is Cujo. I feel like that's such an iconic thing. I mean, dude, how many people have you heard that call mean or questionable dog Cujo? Like,
Okay.
you know, like, so I don't even know if that would top it, but I'd say if I'm gonna have,
I don't think it would.
if I'm gonna build myself a team and try, like, that's what I'd probably go for. And I debated different things. There's some different ones out there,
Mm-hmm.
but like, I just think like The Shining is like kind of the heavy hitter of the team, and then Cujo kind of covers it to where it's just like, yeah, people know, like, you know, evil dog, like, you know, yeah, you may get like Old Yeller with like a rabid dog, but it's not really in the same way. So that would be the two that I would pick. You know, Shawshank was in my mind certainly a little bit, but like,
I just don't think that people know King is behind a lot of this. You know, like, I mean, me and you have had conversations with people. Oh, you guys do a podcast? Yeah, we do it on the Dark Tower series. What's that? Oh, it's a 7-part series, you know, 8-part series, depending on what year we're talking, from Stephen King, that covers, it's a guy trying to save the universe. The cowboy, it's fantasy, it's sci-fi, it's horror, it's all of it. Well, isn't King just a horror novelist? No, haven't you ever seen The Shawshank Redemption or Green Mile?
yeah.
Yeah, sure I have. Those are great movies. Yeah, those are Stephen King stories. Oh, really? They are? Yeah. You ever heard of, and then you go into it. You ever heard of Misery? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a horror one.
And
for
Misery
you.
was in the top of my head too. A little
Yeah.
bit. I think that's in that same echelon of like ones that you might consider in the team to try to surpass it. I mean, it's hard because it is like huge. I mean, it
Mhm.
really is like a massive thing, and that's even outside of these new movies. Like,
Yeah.
assuming these new movies didn't happen, I still think it's huge.
No,
and
the
iconic.
'90s miniseries cemented it as the catch-all for King. Is that if you walk up, I'd be safe to say, if you walked up to 1,000 people on the street and said, "Say the first thing that comes to your mind when I say this," and they go, "Okay," and you say Stephen King, clowns, Pennywise, sewers, it, something along that, something
Are gonna be in
involving
there.
it, red balloons now.
Okay, here's a
That's going to be 99% of your people.
Here's a question for you. And I would say Red Balloons is definitely become bigger with Muschetti's stuff. I think he's really leaned into that a lot. But here's one for you. If you went up to someone and said "Killer Clown," what do you think the odds
Pennywise.
of that or
Yeah.
John Wayne Gacy? Like
No.
a real life,
A
honest
real life
to God
serial
killer.
killer. Yeah.
Like,
No, it's going to be Pennywise. And Ryan makes a valid point. He's basically on the level of Freddy Krueger and Michael Myers, and he's not wrong.
Yeah.
They have T-shirts
yeah,
with him and Freddy and Michael playing games
yeah. No,
and stuff.
I agree. I'm just saying,
So-
I'm not even saying I'm convinced I could surpass it. I'm just saying if I were going to like be a betting man and go, okay, I'll give it a shot, I'd probably go Shining and Cujo.
See, now here's the question. You're going to get double your money if you're able to beat it. Or you could get 1.5 amount of, let's say 4 times the amount for your money.
I'll just stop you there and just say, regardless, even just that first part of the bet, I would not be putting a large sum of money.
Well, let's
behind my thing.
Here's your 3 options. You cannot bet, or you can bet on saying that you can find something that can beat it, or you can take half of that winning. So let's say you put 4 times amount on that you would win. Bet 1,000, win 4,000, right? On finding 2 properties that can beat it, or you can double your money by saying that it would beat anything. Any combination that people throw
all
out.
Stephen King.
All
versus
Stephen
it.
King. Would you bet on it, or would you bet on trying to beat it and go for the money?
I would at least try all King versus it. But again, I wouldn't go massive amounts of money,
Mhm.
you know. But like, I you know me, I'm a betting man. I like to make my trips off to the
I
old
would-
Nevada desert. And
I would wholeheartedly bet that it wins hands down. I don't think it's even close. I honestly don't think it's close.
yeah, and it may not be. Definitely. But it was an interesting question that came up. I threw it on the chat or on Twitter, and I wanted to bring it up. So let's jump into it, chapter 2 now.
For sure.
So let me just point out a couple small things I noticed that I think have been brought up a little bit on different things like Twitter and stuff, but they're definitely things I noticed too. Like I guess Easter eggs ish, whatever, and then you can bring up any as well. And I was curious if you noticed these. Did you notice? Did you stay through the credits? I can't remember if you and I did.
We did.
I was gonna say I saw it twice, and then one time I did, one time I didn't. I couldn't remember which we were. Did you notice any of the casting stuff? There was a couple intriguing things.
Mm-mm.
Eddie's wife is played by the same actor that plays his mom.
Are you
It's
serious?
the same lady.
Oh damn.
And dude, I must say, looking her up, she is a beautiful fucking woman.
Is she?
Oh my god, dude! Like, I don't know what they did to make her Eddie's mom, but like, damn. Because I looked up on IMDb, I'm just like, let me just see. Cause I swear
That's
I saw
not
that.
her.
I swear I saw that in the credits. But let me just check out IMDb. I checked about like her profile picture on IMDb. I was like, God damn! Like, I just because of what she looked like as Eddie's mom, and I get like it's makeup, it's special effects, but there was just part of me that was just like, holy shit! Like, I don't know. Yeah, but that's quite the because who didn't in the movie theater think it's just like his mom? Did you even whisper that to me?
Yeah.
But they don't look anything alike, so
No.
you're not sitting there thinking, "Oh, it's the same actor." But no, it literally is the same actor. So that's quite the funny little thing there. Another one that I actually found on Twitter from the credits that I missed is one of the people in the first movie that gets eaten by Pennywise is credited as the legs that run out of the closet because apparently they mocap the same actor from chapter 1.
Oh, really?
Just for the legs. So it literally says character's legs and the casting is like the person, the actor. So it's like, that is one of the greatest credits in the history of movies, for one. Also, this is actually a big one, and I actually kind of thought I got this, but I had to confirm it on IMDb. When we're at the architecture firm, you feel there's kind of a fake Ben that maybe people that don't know the books would think, oh, that's Ben,
Mm-hmm.
Bigger guy, right? Well, yeah, it's actually Brendan Crane that played Child Ben
Hey!
in the original series.
That's awesome.
So next time you watch it, whether it's on home video or whatever, look it up or look at him closer because that is indeed. So in a way, they kind of tricked you a little bit because if you are thinking little fat Ben from the original series,
Right.
you're going to have some of that facial stuff in your mind, and so they definitely played out the fake there. But yeah, that's really cool. And then also Stanley doing a bird puzzle. I thought that was really a cool throw into the books because Stanley was bird watching when he was first attacked by it, and screamed bird names to escape Pennywise. So I thought that was really cool that he was doing a bird puzzle. Anything you noticed that jumped out at you? I mean, there were some other ones I read later that I didn't notice in theaters. So I didn't necessarily want to credit them. Like, there's like a license plate for Christine above in the pawn shop. There's like some small things like that. But was there anything for you that kind of jumped out? Or
The one that really jumped out with me is one that they hammered it pretty hard.
The
with
ending?
The endings.
yeah, that was
The king can't write an ending, so neither can Bill.
neither could Bill. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I got to be perfectly honest with you, man. It's been a long week since I've seen the movie.
No,
so.
I'm with you. So I actually have some questions. So that's exactly why I brought that up. And we also have emails that'll kind of bring up some topics as well. And Travis says, I thought for a minute that they would have went Ben with a chubby route, which I kind of was down for. Instead, we got a guy that looked ethnic. No, you know what? I thought he looked like fucking a poor man's Cumberbatch. There's times where I'm just like, he looks like Benedict Cumberbatch. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I have some just questions. So overall thoughts.
Okay.
I'll throw it out to you. Overall thoughts in the movie.
I thought it was fantastic.
Okay, because I don't know if you've heard, the critical reception is kind of mixed.
Is it?
There's people that weren't too into it, and we even have an emailer that wasn't as into it. But so you liked it?
I did. I really did. I thought it was a good way of bringing it around. I thought that they made the losers a little bit more less likely to believe and made that more pivotal than it seemed in the book. Because in the book, it's like, oh, well, we have to believe. And then instantly we're down 2. Stanley doesn't obviously even make the trip back to Maine. And then I just spaced on his name. Librarian. Mike gets stabbed and goes to the hospital. So it's only Bill, Eddie, Richie, and Bev and Ben that go down into the tunnel to try and confront Pennywise.
Yeah.
So that was always a part for me that's like, why did we make this like a theme that, they have to believe?
Yeah.
That's not anything. But the ritual of Chud kind of brings that back around and everything like that.
Yeah.
Well, how are you going to do that if we're not going to have a big fucking turtle in the movie? And I kind of figured they weren't going to do that.
Yeah.
So I liked that they focused on the, hey, we got to believe. And they kind of made Mike kind of like, almost like a antagonist, where it's like, you fucker, you lied to us again. Like, you fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, indeed.
But then they got there in the end, and I really liked that.
Yeah.
As a group, you know, Eddie brought them together and everything, and I thought the relationship with Eddie and Richie was just phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I'm the same. I enjoyed it a lot. I was actually somewhat surprised to see the critical response, because like for me, you and I watched it the first time I saw it, and like I didn't even feel like it was 3 hours. Like it just, it's one of those. It just felt like, I mean, I feel like there was a few spots it kind of dragged a little bit, but like it wasn't ever a spot where I was just like, Jesus, like this movie's fucking going on forever. I never felt that.
Ryan brought up one that I talked about after the movie. Well, me and you were just standing around chatting afterwards. Secondhand Rose, Secondhand Clothes, the name of King's shop where the bike is.
Yeah,
that's actually in the book.
Okay, yeah.
We talked, because I freaked out a little bit in the theater, and then I talked about it afterwards, and you're like, what? And I was like, yeah, that's the actual name of the store.
Yeah.
That's actually what it is, so.
And
the conversation between him and the shopkeeper, same.
Yeah.
Let's pretend that I just walked in and start over, all right? That's literally taken almost word for word from the book.
See, I would wanted to read it before this came out, but I did not get a chance, so, yeah, I'll definitely, there's some stuff that you probably caught because you were pretty fresh off of it. And Travis, along with his earlier comments, says he didn't talk about the actor for adult Ben didn't look like a white guy, which I don't mind, but the kid was white, and I guess I didn't even catch that necessarily. It didn't read to me like I would say that of them, he's probably the one that looked the least like his kid, and not just that fat versus not fat. Like there was just something that just different.
Yeah.
That, but again, I guess there are those people you see online that, you know, if they lose a bunch of weight, like they look like different people. So
sure.
Maybe that's part of it. But I will say overall, like, I enjoyed his performance, but he's probably the least amount of like the same, quote unquote. Whereas like Eddie is the flip side, and I believe that the shot that they did where it dissolved from one to the other was just like the director and the casting director like giving each other high five. That's the only reason they did that, is because they're just like,
we nailed this casting.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so yeah, my overall thoughts, I enjoyed it a lot. I did have a little bit of gripes with it, but I have a question that we'll kind of get to that. But yeah, so next question, chapter 1 or chapter 2?
1.
Okay, me too. But again, like I told you, like I actually, and I haven't said this on the show yet, I was very apprehensive going into this movie, and I didn't mention that one iota on the podcast because I didn't want to seem like a downer. But like the miniseries, the second half is terrible. It's nigh on unwatchable. Like the adult stuff is garbage. Like it in every way. I mean, the Honest Trailers just did a thing for the series, and like it just brings back like, and I get like I grew up watching it, so it's maybe, of course, there's some nostalgia to where I can and will watch it, you know, whereas like maybe if it was something I was exposed to for the first time as an adult, I probably wouldn't ever go back to it. So I can watch it, but God, the adult stuff is like just markedly worse than the kid stuff. And I think that goes back into the book too. I don't think the adult stuff is nearly as good as the kid stuff when it comes right down to it. So overall, separating this into chapter 1 and chapter 2 the way that they did from the moment go when the end, because it wasn't at the end of the first one that basically said something about chapter 1 or something. There's something they gave us right at the credits that kind of gave us the impression that you know, we're gonna get another part or whatever.
Was it after the credits that it said it chapter 1?
I can't remember exactly. I gotta watch it again. But like the moment that happened, there was just like this apprehensiveness on my part, because I'm just like, the adult stuff's not that great. Like it's never as good as the kid stuff. And I love 2017, the movie. It's great. Chapter 1 is incredible. So there was just part of me that was just like, yeah, like I'm hoping it's gonna be good, but I was just, there was some pit in my stomach that was like, this is gonna like not go well. So that was kind of my thought process going in. But I think that they were able to kind of do what they did and make me enjoy the movie to where I was relieved when we got out of it. But I will definitely say chapter 1 is the best to me. But with all that first part to preface by saying, not that I would expect any differently. if he went to the past in 2016 and said, "Hey, Tad, over the next like 4 years, there's going to be 2 It movies, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. Which would you be more excited for? It Chapter 1, like without a
kid
doubt.
stuff, yeah.
The stuff. With
Especially
the kids.
if you tell 2016 Tad, It Chapter 1 is going to focus mostly on the kids. It Chapter 2 is mostly on the adults.
Yeah.
You're going to instantly say the kids because I know that you like that part more.
Yeah, it's just kind of what you said earlier about why you love It so much. There's not one part of what you said that tells me the adult side is what you love about that book. You said it's the shit that reminds you of your childhood. It reminds you of like it's that familiar thing, and like that comes from the earlier part of the book or the kid part, not because it doesn't separate like the movies.
Travis
obviously.
just hit something on the head that I wanted to cover before we go on to your next question. Chapter 2 elevated both films for me, and I think that's where Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 would both be solid 8s or 9s on my scale. But I think when you put them together, Chapter 2 makes Chapter 1 just that much better. And I think that's so rare for a sequel to complement versus a straight comparison. You always hear, like, name a sequel that's better than the original. Terminator 2, Godfather Part 2. That doesn't take
you watch yourself.
That doesn't take away from the Godfather and Terminator.
To give to your example, one of the ones that does that for me that elevates the first is Devil's Rejects for House of a Thousand Corpses. House of a Thousand Corpses I enjoyed for what it was, but I didn't love it as much as the hype had brought me to because I waited for that movie for so long. But when I saw Devil's Rejects, I was able to go back and watch House of a Thousand Corpses and fucking love the hell of it way more because of and I agree with you. I do want to watch Chapter 1 again to proof it out, but I 100% agree with what Travis is saying and what you're saying. I believe that Chapter 2 will elevate Chapter 1. I just haven't had a chance to test that yet.
Gotcha.
Have you?
No, obviously no.
Okay.
For those of you that don't know, so we recorded 2 weeks ago, last Thursday, so the week off in between recording, Tad and I went and saw It.
Yeah.
Friday
opening
night. Friday, I got up, took my family to FanX. It's Utah's version of Comic-Con.
Yeah.
It's not allowed to be called Comic-Con, so for legal purposes, they changed it to FanX. Spent the day there, met a lot of really cool people that me, my wife, and my daughter are huge fans of, so we got to do that. Saturday, I flew out to California, got on a ship Sunday, and went on a cruise. I literally got back Thursday at like 4 o'clock back into Utah.
Yeah.
So yesterday was to do laundry, get the everything sorted out. My daughter back from my parents, and back. She's still at school, so we still had to do that. So that's obviously, you can tell, obviously, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, dealing with the cold and the throat. I honestly don't know if I'm sick. It very well could be that I've talked more, and this is saying something, in the last week than I ever have in a previous week.
Yeah.
I talk on the phone for a living. I talk all the time to my daughter. I talk all the time to my wife. When I'm here with you, obviously I'm doing talking. When I'm with friends, I you know me, I'm a chatterbox.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just so crazy that over the last week, it really was. It was from, we stayed busy on the cruise and everything like that. So it's hard for me to go back to Thursday. But one thing I want to focus on is what we talked about coming out of the theater when we had our conversation. And thank you, Travis, for bringing it up because it reminded me. We noticed something in the parking lot. That there was 3 main characters of It Chapter 2.
Yeah.
Bill, Bev, and Richie. And it was interesting that each one of them kind of had a sidekick.
Yeah.
Bill had Mike, Bev had Ben, and Richie had Eddie for adults.
Yeah.
It was interesting how they did that because obviously they would have been odd out if Stanley had come. But Stanley, they stayed true to the book and Stanley didn't come. And Bev had her flashback where she knew what was going to happen and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Bill had to deal with like Mike and being the leader and Mike trying to get him to step up and lead. And Richie had Eddie and everything that went along with that. And so that's where for me, it made it a little bit more interesting that it wasn't a losers club. It was the story of the losers on their individual journeys to become the losers club again.
Yeah.
Which they did down in Pennywise's lair, which really made the movie for me.
Yeah.
Is when they all came back together, even though Mike's betrayal, using air quotes, a betrayal there where he did lie to him.
Yeah.
I'll admit that. But, let's be perfectly honest. It's not like they didn't make a promise and not keep it.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of them fucking skedaddled right out of that restaurant after one jump scare.
Yeah.
So for me, that's where it was really interesting how they did that, where they had like the 3 mains and the 3 under the mains kind of supporting their story. You know, Ben's whole flashback was about Beverly.
Yeah.
And everything involving her and everything like that.
Yeah, a lot of Richie was tied into Eddie.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, there's definitely. I wanted to go back and catch up on some of the chat stuff. Travis says Ben wasn't an issue for me, but he wasn't important to this version. It was Richie and Eddie's show, and I think in terms of performances,
Oh, for sure.
yeah, they definitely stole the show. Travis says, I rewatched the miniseries in Chapter 1 in preparation for Chapter 2, and yeah, the miniseries is laughable. I still like it, though, and I think I'm the same way. I do still like it. I still will watch it, but it's not one I'm like going back to watch a lot for enjoyment. And I think, or like for massive enjoyment, because the second half is kind of a slog. And I think I say that in my email, but I like Chapter 2 slightly more, which is, yeah, that's awesome. We'll definitely get to the emails in just a second. And Chris says it's not about the adults versus children moments. Chapter 2 didn't feel good because it overused jump scares, and I don't know that. I think I saw some other people mention that. I didn't catch that a lot necessarily, like jump scares.
It had a lot more.
I
It had a lot more.
don't know why. I'm just maybe because they don't affect me, so I'm just like I don't.
It's true they don't.
I don't
it's
catalog
true.
them.
It's true they don't. Don't take it as Tad not as passing that off. Jump scares never affect Tad
Because I
ever.
see him coming. Like I've just seen so many horror movies.
Mhm.
It's like
He's been doing this since he was 5, guys. I mean,
Yeah.
that's almost 30 years now for Tad.
yeah.
So don't take it the wrong way that he's like, oh, there was no jump scares in Chapter 2.
Yeah.
That's because he literally was not affected by a single one. So
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, Chris. So I can vouch for him. There was a lot more jump scares, a lot less creep.
Okay.
That made it Chapter 1 so much better. Like, think about the garage scene with the photos.
Yeah.
The build up, 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 the jump scare.
Yeah.
There was build up to that. There wasn't as much of that in Chapter 2. There was a lot more just bah.
Okay.
And everything like that. So
Yeah.
there
makes sense.
was some build ups. I will say that the scene under the bleachers is going to haunt me until I die.
I mentioned that outside the theater
Oh
to you.
God,
Yeah.
that girl is just a little bit older than my daughter right now, so that just fucking terrifies me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, there's no killer clown in my neighborhood, so
that you know of.
shut the hell up. Hashtag Tad is terrible. Why the fuck would you say that?
Oh. Then let's see. Ryan says 1,000 Corpses will be Universal Horror Nights, which I'm going. That's awesome. I do need to watch that. Although the reviews are coming in for the new third movie, and they're not very good. So, but
Wait, Rob Zombie made a third one?
Yeah, it's in the works. 3 from Hell or something like that.
Oh,
is what it's
wow.
called. Yeah, not getting kind reviews, but I'll still watch it because I love the first 2 a lot. Travis says, I would honestly flip Bev and Richie. They all console him at the end, but he gets a lot of screen time and steals every scene. About like how we kind of saw like the leads. Ryan says Ben is still my favorite character. Yeah, I think Ben was awesome. Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Travis says I'm the same as Tad. I can see a jump scare coming and they don't affect me. Last jump scare that got me and it was effectively set up was the tongue click in the mother's car in Hereditary. Yeah, that I
still haven't seen that one.
Yeah, that's something else for sure. Okay, so next up, kind of touch on the chat a tiny bit, but favorite performances, I guess. Let's just give it to like
Bill Skarsgård still takes the show for me.
Yeah, he's
a fantastic Pennywise.
Yeah,
and everything that he did. Second up, I would have to say Richie.
Okay.
I really liked Bill Hader as Richie. I thought he did a fantastic job. Still, to me, a little bit is Eddie's a little bit too loud, as he was in the first one.
Yeah, I loved Eddie a lot.
I know a lot of people loved him, but for me, Eddie was a little bit more timid in the book, and so it was really a change to have him be so upfront and blunt and fuck you Richie and fuck you Bill and fuck all of you.
Yeah.
So Eddie,
I love the mom line being his last
yeah
line. That's pretty great.
Yeah,
that's pretty great. I enjoyed that a lot.
But for me, Richie was my favorite in the book.
Okay.
And Richie was my favorite in the movies, both first and second.
Yeah.
They've definitely shied away from the voices.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I think there's 2 things from what I'm seeing a lot on social media. Apparently, Bill Hader actually is a very big vocal
Oh,
person.
yeah.
So I feel like there was a thought that maybe they thought it would be too on the nose to have him in that role. Plus also secondarily, like, honestly, who the hell does impressions in this day and age?
Right.
Stand-up comedy. Like, let's go look at Netflix and look through every comedic thing. I would guess you'd probably find maybe one or two vocal people, like people that do like Dana Carvey type stuff versus fucking 100 dudes that are doing just normal stand-up.
Yeah.
So
no, for sure,
I-
it's definitely not the popular form of comedy.
yeah, but he did do some though. He got Job of the Hutt.
He did, and it was really funny, and that's where for me that was really good. I liked Bill. I did.
McAvoy.
I liked McAvoy as Bill, and I thought he did a really good job of not overdoing the stutter.
Yeah.
If I remember right, the miniseries, I haven't watched it for a while. The adult that does Bill really overdid the stutter.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but it's McAvoy. I mean, he's one of the best actors in Hollywood right now. So I would definitely.
Oh, I didn't know that. Hader writes for South Park too.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't know
damn.
that.
That makes sense now.
Travis says, my favorite performance is Bill Hader. Love Skarsgård, but Hader just owned the entire movie. And I agree, and I was actually somewhat apprehensive about him because I know his reputation. I don't know that I've ever really seen anything of his necessarily because that's not really my bag.
No, we talked about that after the movie. I'm like, dude, you have to know Bill Hader. And you're like, no. And then I went into his IMDb and I started reading through some of the things, and I'm like, oh, yeah, these are comedies that... Tad's movie collection is over 2,000 strong now. The weakest has to be comedies.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's not one that Tad goes to the cinema for.
Yeah, not
It's
much.
It's very rare, especially since Jim Carrey, who knows what the fuck he's doing nowadays.
And Hot Fuzz doesn't come up every year.
Hot Fuzz doesn't. Yeah, exactly. Tad has a very specific sense of humor, versus like me and like my wife will go see romantic comedies and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
Hader has played in a lot of Pineapple Express type of comedies. Stuff like that is not Tad's forte. Mine really either. I've never even seen Pineapple Express. I at least knew of Bill Hader from some of his voice acting.
Yeah.
So.
And let's see. Chris says, I LOL'd a lot when Richie scared everybody with the losers were in their secret base. Yeah, that was
fucking great.
That was killer. And then he like does the little dance, like the little dance thing, and like, dude, that was probably the best moment in terms of like for Richie. But I guess for me, my concern a little bit with Hader was I knew he was comedic. Just that's the only thing I really know is Bill Hader is a comedic. I didn't know that if he'd be able to handle any dramatic stuff, so I didn't know if they would give him any dramatic stuff. But honestly, he's probably the dramatic center of the movie in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like, God, they put a lot on him. Like, they didn't like, and maybe, and because Travis says here that he's also a good dramatic actor, so maybe there's stuff I'm not super like familiar with. But I would have thought that you maybe would have given him a little bit lighter, light on the drama a little bit, but they didn't, and he fucking nailed it.
Which is what Richie's character is in the book. Is he's not as dramatic centered. He's more of the comedic relief until the very end, which is the twist. Is that Richie's the one that goes after Bill to save him with the ritual and out in there, and basically he's the one that defeats Pennywise, which is like I always forget that when I read the book, is it's like fuck, Bill's gonna kick his ass.
Yeah,
of course, Bill's the one out for revenge. That's how the story goes. Yes, you're going to get a posse together. You're going to get your Magnificent Seven, and you're going to go after the fucker who killed your brother. And at the end, it's going to be you standing over the guy that killed him, and you're going to be like, all right, listen, fucker, you killed my brother. Sorry, I got to do this. Bang, bang. Not in this one. And I love that King did that. No, listen, he's going to kill you if I don't do something, so fuck it. Bang, bang, kind of thing. So I love that they gave Richie a bigger role. And I think that I think he nailed it.
Oh, yeah, he absolutely did. I mean, he absolutely, I have a hard time between he and Eddie about best performance because I feel like Skarsgård I'm going to put in a separate category just because it's such a different thing. But I feel like it's Bill or it's Hader or got to figure out whether we're going to do character or actor names. We keep changing between them.
Do character.
But I mean, Eddie and Richie are they stole the movie for me. Like, absolutely,
great chemistry.
Like, just chemistry together, but also just it was the two actors are just fucking phenomenal in those roles. And that's not to put down anyone else because there was a lot of great performances. Also, as we're on the role or on the topic of Richie, I don't even have a note for it, but when he gets blasted, it's one of the best fucking moments of the movie for me.
Oh, it was
it's
so good. The deadlights.
Yeah,
that's what you're talking about. Yeah. You really think he's about to let loose with like a string of voices and stuff, and then just
yeah. It was like done perfectly, and not just him, but like the way it's filmed, the way it was executed, it was all it was fucking brilliant. It's like it was one of my favorite moments, probably in both movies, like top moment for overall.
We got John Egan weighing in here, says, I think Bill Hader gave the best performance. I didn't care for the new scenes with Child Eddie. His neurosis wasn't as good as it was in the first film. And then Travis says the bathroom gave stabbing scene with Eddie and Powers was funny and uncomfortable. That one was rough to watch for me. That was like, oh God, like you're stabbed in the cheek and you're just walking, not screaming.
Yeah.
You have a knife in your mouth.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, I think like I didn't mind the Eddie scene as a kid with his mom.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it made sense to me. Maybe I don't know about like comparing how well it was executed versus the first one, but I enjoyed because the idea is like, right, his mom's trying to hold him back from these kids. So if he goes with these kids, like it's kind of abandoning his mom. Like that's the trip that she's going to put on him. Mm-hmm. So like that's kind of playing that out. Like Pennywise is kind of using that. I was like, if you're going to go with your friends, you're abandoning your mom. So then to have him in that position where he literally like his neuroses overrides like the fact where he's not going to save his mom is like, I felt it was like psychologically kind of a cool thing. And it's the leper too, right? Like, I think there's some people that were kind of missing that. I saw some people online that were just like, what the hell? I'm like, the fucking leper from the first one. That's like his
thing.
Yeah, that's like his freaking
Ben's mummy, his leper, Mike's bird, Ben's blood.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you told me that you noticed in the parking lot after the movie on Thursday?
I'm not sure.
About
it was a long time ago.
The flashbacks versus the encounters with Pennywise. How some of them had both, some of them only had one.
Yeah, because like we obviously know that like apparently the original cut for this was like 6 hours or something, and like whatever crazy long. My thought process was that maybe everyone had both an adult and a child encounter with it as they were doing that whole second act go out and find the token type thing, and that when it came to cutting for time, that's why some people didn't have both, because it was cut for time.
Right.
Because some had both, some didn't. So I just feel like maybe that's where originally, like just pairing, like you'd have like an adult and a child, whatever. That's kind of my working theory of how it was filmed originally.
Some of them were put together, where like Ben's had him running through the school like he was running from something as an adult.
Yeah.
But what would he be running from? His memory? He's just standing there remembering.
Yeah.
And then it was Richie had the one for sure. He had the Paul Bunyan statue that led right into his encounter with Pennywise in the modern.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, there's the duel for Richie.
Yeah.
But then you look at Bill, only modern.
Yeah.
Nothing from the kid.
Yeah.
So
well, no, I mean you get the sewer grate with the kid.
Well, but there's no encounter. He just yells at the sewer grate and then rides away.
Well, no, the Pennywise says to him because you weren't there.
Oh, right.
Which is a big thing a little bit. Now I have to say, there's like and I'm not going to get into like, whatever, but there was a whole group, there was a meme that came out of it, and it was, because there's people that are pissed that Pennywise was like, basically going after Richie because he was gay. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh yeah, so this, demonic child-eating clown is not friendly to the gay, like to gay people.
Yeah.
And it's like, just like the ridiculousness of it, because like, yeah, like, I don't know, like it's Pennywise, like he's going to attack people, like, because like there's a lot of people too with like fat shaming, like is a huge like thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was like what movie was it recently that was like really big into that? Oh, it's the Avengers Endgame. Yeah. There's a lot of people that were like pissed off that like Thor's friends fat. Were like making fun of him, even, just because he was fat. And like, so there's people like that can have issues, but I'm like, you should never have issues because Pennywise does something, because he is literally like the embodiment of fucking
evil,
malice and evil. Like he's going to come at you the worst possible way. So,
well, I mean, okay, let's let's take the lid off of that and talk about that for a second, because let's look at the victims of Pennywise. Okay, let's look at the little girl. What's the one thing he focused on to get her to draw in?
Oh God, wasn't that terrible too?
That like birthmark.
But to play on her empathy was like the height of monstrosity. That might be the worst Pennywise thing that they've ever filmed. To be honest with you, like overall, like going into God, like because like Jesus, dude, to play on the kids like emotions like that was like there was part of me too that like felt like a little bit uncomfortable because I'm just like, this is what a pedophile would do.
It is,
you know.
No, it's
like,
what they do.
Yeah. So there was just part of me that like thought that it made it even worse because I'm just like, oh my God, you fucking fiend. But yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
But for that, you know, and then like there's the
kid in the fun house.
The kid in the fun house.
That's the other big one where I'm like, good God, dude.
Yeah.
That's one of my notes too. Just I was going to bring up, but we'll talk about it now. But it's like, you don't get a lot of that. A lot of horror movies, you can't kill kids.
You'll cut away.
You can't kill kids and you can't kill dogs.
Yep.
Some horror movies break those rules, but if they do, they're usually very tasteful about it. And I'm not saying this is distasteful. I'm just saying this one did not fucking shy away. They let you fucking marinate in that little girl and that little boy being...
Not even killed. Fucking devoured.
Yeah, indeed. But sorry, you're kind of listing off some of the...
But it's just like, you know, like some of those things when you look at him, he definitely goes for like your insecurities. So it would make perfect sense that if, you know, going after Richie because he's gay and hasn't come out about it either. So yeah, it makes sense that he's going to go after that. It's an insecurity for him, you know?
Yeah. In the chat, Travis said pedo Pennywise and then says that's some pedo tactics, which is exactly what I said. I had my chat rolled up because I was going to catch up with a couple of these comments. So yeah, Travis, exact same thing I was thinking. I totally agree.
Yeah, Travis. Yeah, the evil clown eats children, but he better be down with LGBTQ.
Yeah, I mean, there was people that were kind of in that vein, and I'm just like, I'm not going to get into like the whole like social stuff in general, but like I did find that funny because there was a meme where it was just like, hey, the evil demonic child-eating monster isn't friendly to my, you know, like views, and I'm like, it's Pennywise, dude. He's gonna be like a fucking horrific. I mean, he fat shamed too. You know, he's
fat boy.
He's hitting all the things there. I will say that though, is that not a reference? Is that in the book? Kiss Me, because that was in the original series. So I'm like, that might just be an homage to like Tim Curry. Kiss me, fat boy. Like that's in the original.
Oh no, it's the original series. Yeah.
So,
I don't think it's in the book.
So I love that. Also, the clowns in the funhouse looked like Pennywise. From the original series. They're Tim Curry, Pennywise. John in the chat said he was about Hater. He was good in the movie where he was Kristen Wiig's gay brother. Forgive me, I forget the title. And then Travis says skeleton twins. And then with the bathroom stabbing, you mentioned that. And then Ryan says, I think Eddie Dean would have destroyed, or would destroy movie Pennywise like he did Blaine, or Eddie Dean, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then Kiss Me Fat Boy. Okay, so just catching up with the old chat here.
Yeah, Eddie would absolutely wreck Pennywise, and let's not even discuss it further because we know it's true.
Yeah, I mean, all Pennywise would have to do is turn into Henry, and Eddie would be a pool of weeping flesh. No. Okay, so anything that you had issues with, least favorite stuff? I had a few things that were like
I think I already kind of covered. I think I already covered it a little bit. Is the Losers Club was not as loyal as I would have hoped. It was something that they made a promise as a kid. I mean, hell, it doesn't make any sense to me for Bev to go through what she went through with her husband, just to turn around and walk away as soon as she got there.
Yeah,
like to me, that's where Bill leaves a movie set. You know. Richie walks out on a week's worth of shows.
Yeah.
Eddie basically almost gives his wife a heart attack.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing in the book to come back. They don't cover that as well in the movie. And then they just instantly turn around and we're like, oh, this is what's happening? Peace! I'm just going to let the clown continue eating fucking kids.
Yeah.
Wow, way to go, you fucking pieces of shit.
Yeah.
That's where, but that's, again, it goes back to what and I keep bringing this up. It goes back to what we discussed when we had our part 1 of the Flag Summit. If you're going to further your goals and you're going to ignore or step on other people's rights and happiness and stuff like that to get there, fuck you.
Yeah.
And so that's where, for me, it was really hard for these guys to turn their backs basically on an entire town.
I think I forgave them just in the sense of like, Pennywise fear. Like I almost feel like it's like Nazgul
Yeah.
fear from Lord of the Rings. It's like beyond anything you could almost even portray on screen. I feel like it's only in the literature that you really get the
True.
full sense of like the fear. So I feel like I only excuse it because of that, but I get what you're saying totally.
But the part of me is that, okay, Ted, if you're the chosen one, if you're the only one that can do this, and you say, yeah, I'm just gonna go now. I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically you're just saying fuck you to literally all these people here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it was a little bit for sure.
But aside from that, I really didn't have many qualms.
Okay.
I liked that they made Pennywise head versus just doing a spider full on. We talked about that in the parking lot. I remember that.
Yeah. Like adding the Bill Skarsgård
the clown head to the spider.
to allow Skarsgård to have that full performance, because that's what we talked about in the parking lot. Was like, because like Curry just loses. He's gone.
Just gone.
So it's just
and
like
it's just this
and
animatronic spider.
And not that they could have done much better in the 90s, but like they allowed Bill to actually have the full performance all the way through the end, which was I think it was good. I think it gave a lot to Bill to allow him to have that, where Tim never had that in the old days.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that a lot. So for me, my least favorite stuff, I feel like Mike kind of got the short end of the stick. I don't think that he had anything to really deal with in a lot of ways. Like he was kind of the instigator, the straw that stirs the drink a little bit. But where's his character stuff? Like I feel like they gave us a couple small seconds of like seeing the shit like that shows his parents are druggies, like the headline that he's seeing incorrectly. But like I feel like he didn't have the same meat to deal with as the other characters did. And I even like thought about like in my head, like, okay, it's a 3-hour movie already. So you know what I came to, and book purists would hate me, cut all the fucking Henry Bowers shit. I didn't like any of it overall.
Yeah.
Like I the bathroom scene, it was really uncomfortable. It was really well, but like there was not
we already had the rift. That was the thing, is that in the book the rift came where, well, we're already without Stanley. Hopefully the 6 of us can still do it. Oh, now Mike's taken out by Bowers. Hopefully the 5 of us, we're probably gonna die. Here's the hopelessness. We're still gonna try though.
Yeah.
But that wasn't needed in the movie.
Yeah, it just felt very tacked on. I don't know. There was nothing about it that I liked, honestly, with him. And again, I know it's in the book, and I know that people are like super purist of the book. If I were the filmmaker, that shit would not have been in there, and Mike would have had more, and probably all of them would have had a little bit more.
It would have been 10, 12 minutes of Bowers total.
Yeah, give that to Mike.
Between him coming out of the sewer, going back home and getting arrested.
Yeah, in the nut house.
The nut house, escaping the nut house, stabbing Eddie, escaping Eddie, and
Mike.
Going after Mike and getting killed by Richie.
Yeah.
So that amount of time,
I'd say that's at least 15 minutes.
15 minutes. You take that 15 minutes, you could roll 6 of that, 7 of that to Mike.
Yeah.
Build that character up to where he's another member of the Losers Club, not someone that's just kind of left out in the dark.
Yeah.
And then you could even add more to the other losers.
The others, if you needed to, yeah. And then Travis says, I liked Spider Pennywise. I had 0 issues with the film on the first viewing. I was just hooked. I will admit to you, I've seen it 2 times, and I also say with these least favorite things, these are small qualms. I did enjoy the movie overall. Like I said, like both times, even the second time, the movie went by quick. So I'm not at all like down on the movie at all. Like it's not as good as the first one, but it doesn't mean that it's not a great movie. But the Henry stuff just felt wasted. It just didn't feel that great to me. That bathroom scene was really cool because there's just like the almost awkwardness of the violence was maybe the only redeeming thing of all the Henry stuff that I liked. But like overall, like the actor didn't, like, for me, I was just like, there's something about the actor that just maybe, and part of my bias, it might be that Henry in the original series is probably my least favorite thing in the entire thing. The adult Henry is just like terrible. Like if you're going to synopsize the second half or the adult side, adult Henry in the original series is like probably my least favorite stuff, even worse than the spider. And so like maybe that is like polluted me a little bit, but there was just part of me that like with adult Henry where I'm just like, no.
Well,
like,
see, it makes sense.
Especially when I saw Mike not having what I thought he should have had to have more story, there was just part of me that's like instantly I look at Henry and go, let's just cut all that shit out and give the time to Mike, because I think that he's definitely more I don't know, he was more deserving of it, I guess. And Travis, Says, no, the guy playing Henry is good, though. He was nuts, and we got the Hawks driving the car, and Eddie yelling at Henry that needed to be that he needed to lose the mullet. Yeah, I agree. There was good stuff. There was a few good things there, but I don't think any of that, for me, was enough to justify that being kept versus giving Mike some time and keeping the runtime exactly where it was.
Well,
for me, that's just me. That's just my, and those are the only qualms I really had. I didn't like that Mike was kind of, I mean, I liked what they gave him, but I just wish on top of like his what he played in the group as an adult, I wish we would have had something for him to deal with his childhood or whatever. And I just felt like it was all like, if anyone got the most cutting, I bet you it was probably Mike, from like dealing with childhood shit. And I just wish that whatever. Oh, and I mentioned outside the parking lot too. I found it kind of weird that they didn't really point out the fact, for him to point out the fact of like, you're all super successful, very rich people. I'm not, like,
and you have no kids. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, cause I felt like that was like odd and maybe a little bit awkward. Because there was just part of me, it's like, if you haven't seen the original, if you haven't read the books, you might be like, well, why the fuck are all these guys so goddamn successful, but the black guy stayed in town and is like, is kind of like what kind of get the shaft. Like, I pointed out, and then it's no longer an issue. But some people might look at that and go, "What the fuck? Like, why did that happen?" But like in the series and in the book, I think they pointed it out to where it's just like, this
Mike,
is part of it. You know,
yeah.
you
Mike
guys,
specifically calls it out that you're all moderately wealthy. None of you have kids.
yeah,
You know, many of you have married, but none of you have had kids. Have you been trying? And then Richie talks even about like his snip step. I just spaced on the word. Hysterectomy? No.
no, vasectomy.
Vasectomy. Thank you. And how it was a botched job, and he could have very well knocked up that chick that he was seeing and everything. The camaraderie is what was missing from the adults. If we had had that, I would have said Chapter 2 is better than Chapter 1.
I'd say, yeah, the only time I felt it is in the Chinese restaurant. And that was before you enter the Pennywise into the equation.
No, the bunkhouse when they find Stan's hairnets. That's the only time they had camaraderie.
Okay, I mean, I felt there was quite a bit at the Chinese restaurant, but yeah, you're right. That there is some there as well. Yeah, totally. So next question on my list here: anything that was in the book that you were surprised made it into the movie, whether it's a small
Paul
reference.
Bunyan.
Okay.
How the fuck did they manage to fit Paul Bunyan in there? Like, holy shit. Dude.
Yeah.
Like, that is such an off the wall thing.
Wasn't that in the trailer for the first one?
The Paul Bunyan statue was.
Because we were just like,
yeah,
the statue, it's there.
There's Paul Bunyan. There's no way that he's going to fucking get up and attack Richie. That's just, there's no fucking way that happens.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
then that happened. And then the other one that stuck out to me was,
you mentioned the name of the store.
Secondhand Rose, Secondhand Clothes was one. I had one. Go ahead with yours, and I think I'll remember it.
For me, I the Paul Bunyan thing definitely stuck out. I wasn't expecting that. You know what? I actually don't know, because again, I'm not as familiar with the book as you are, because it's been a couple years now since I've read it. I actually think I may have read it in the lead into Chapter 1. So yeah, it's been a couple years, so I'm not as fresh on it.
Fuck, Adrian Mellon.
Oh yeah, but
like we absolutely
we did tip. I mean, they
that.
tipped our hand on that a little bit by telling us that he was going to be, and we saw the image in the trailer of the balloons.
No, but how well they did that scene.
The armpit was like, where he bites him is exactly from the book. So,
well, even so, I was a little bit worried about it, because we talked about this in the parking lot too. Is that gay bashing in 2016 when the movie is set versus the 80s is a vastly different time frame to do it in.
Yeah. Sorry, Chris from Australia just popped in, but he's gonna pop back out because he hasn't seen Chapter 2. Yeah, Chris, we're whenever you get around to listening, you popped in the chat. You may already be gone, but yeah, we saved it for the end. We had a full episode of everything else, but we're just talking about it at the end here. So, yeah, good to pop in. He says, I realize you're talking Chapter 2. I haven't seen it yet, so I won't stay. Just wanted to say that my daughter watched it Chapter 1 last night for her first Stephen King.
She's 15.
She said enjoyed it, but it wasn't scary. She's 15. She's seeing Chapter 2 next weekend with a friend. That's awesome. I love that.
See, he let his daughter watch it at 15. I'm not taking my 6-year-old to it, Tad.
Should, man.
No.
She was old enough a year ago.
No.
She was old enough a year ago. Look at me. I turned out great.
No, you did not. Again, hashtag Tad is terrible.
So sorry, what were you saying? You mentioned Adrian Mellon.
Adrian Mellon is obviously a really big thing for us. Is that, you know, like in the book, that
I
is
couldn't
a
believe how
huge-
hard they let it go.
Yeah,
That scene dragged out.
it was rough.
That was a tough one. And I mean, it should be,
Right.
but my God, it's like the kid, the two kids we mentioned.
Right.
There's an aspect where you feel like there's like kind of a line, and as long as they don't cross that, it kind of feels comfortable. And I think Muschietti full well knew that line and crossed it on purpose, because that's the point of horror, right? Is to cross lines like that.
Travis.
And I think that that was just like, God in heaven. There was one tweet I saw where someone's like, the first 15 minutes of it was worse than the entire movie of Midsummer, and it talking about, and then it was like mentioning Adrian Mellon in some way, and I was just like, yeah, that was pretty rough. That was a hard one.
Travis mentions the filmmakers replaced racism from the book with homophobia in the movie. The opening beatdown was the most brutal scene in the movie to me.
Oh, yeah. Most brutal in the first movie, second movie, the miniseries, maybe even the book. I mean, the book obviously goes pretty hard into like Patrick Hoxner, so maybe not the book, but like, because King's books are.
If we're gonna talk brutal, let's talk true brutal. Let's talk the Corcoran boy getting eaten by the creature from the Black Lagoon while he's still alive. Yeah, that's pretty fucking brutal.
Patrick with the eye, though, like,
yeah,
that's
leeches.
that's probably the worst. So no, we won't compare it to King, but it's definitely worse than everything else we've seen on screen from it or Pennywise. Like, that was really, really hard. And like, I actually saw a lot of people that were actually fairly pissed, not book fans, because that didn't pay off. We didn't see those characters get their comeuppance, which I get. Because in a filmmaking way, you can't do something like that and not let it pay off with comeuppance.
Even like getting arrested, there was no
they didn't
interviews.
Even, they didn't even show that they were arrested.
Like
there was just nothing. I could see why. It's like we've talked about before, like Jurassic World, right? You get the freaking assistant. She does nothing wrong, but she gets killed in one of the most horrific ways of any Jurassic Park movie. Like in a way that these guys that beat Adrian Mellon would have deserved. But this woman that's just like, whatever, she gets that. And it bothers a lot of people because it's like, wait, why did that woman die like that? She didn't fucking deserve it in Jurassic World. And this is just one of those things where it's just like, okay, you just built these guys up as like some of the most villainous motherfuckers. And it doesn't really give you any payoff at all. So that's a overall rough. And I saw some people that were bitching about like, how is it you never saw those characters? I'm like, I get it. Like as a It fan, we kind of get a little bit, but don't they ultimately end up skating? Like they get convicted, but don't they end up like out fairly quickly? Like kind of to show like
I don't think it actually goes into it because it happens right towards the start of the cycle, and we barely get to.
I think there's a passing, like less than a paragraph, and I feel like it gives us an idea that they're convicted, but that they kind of get like whether it's a suspended sentence
they get like
or
4 or 5 years at the shank.
Some weird thing like that. Yeah, like I don't feel like it plays out very well, just to kind of show the overall system, but
Travis says that he brought his 9-year-old, raising him right. 9 is not 6, and Tad's telling me to bring her at 5. So there's a difference there.
I had a question about do you think it'll change the way you view chapter 1? But we already kind of talked about that a little bit. So Richie being gay, what did you think of that?
Didn't bother me in the slightest.
I actually think it added a lot to the character, and I actually think when it comes to like changing the first film, that's going to be the big thing that I'm going to look at in terms of like overall, like how does that change the first movie? And like, cause like in a lot of ways, Richie's kind of overcompensating with things, right? Like he's trying to appear not gay. So he's like constantly just saying the shit that you would say. Yeah. But I will say watching it a second time, chapter 2 here, it was interesting to me. A couple things, Eddie jumping into the hammock with him would probably be something that he rather enjoyed. And I don't mean that in like a vulgar way. I just mean like whatever. It's like, just like if you had a crush on a girl and she jumped into a hammock with you, like, it's like a way of like, fuck you, get out of it. Like you're going to enjoy that.
It would be the same as Ben had a couple of those in the book.
With
going to the movie with Bev.
Yeah, exactly. So that, from chapter 2, which is self-contained, the other big one was in the Chinese restaurant. You got married to a woman? Like, that sounds like a knock, but that's a little bit more heartbreaking when you watch it again, where you're just like, yeah, he's you know, and it makes you. I mean, there's a lot of people debating like, is there stuff that we're not seeing? Like, did they maybe like have some kind of experience together, and like Eddie's like hiding his, you know, sexuality, or like, or is it just like unrequited love, like Ben? You know, like there's whatever. We're never gonna know. It's not in the unless there's deleted scenes. But like, I found it interesting because there was a couple things that changed from chapter 2 as I watched it the second time. Where I'm like, oh shit, to know that was like kind of hurts the whole, like hurts your heart a little bit. But I enjoyed it. I thought it added a lot to Richie, because I feel like Richie as an adult, like he's still funny, but like funny can only take you so far, right? Like you're not going to get as much from just being a wise guy as like having emotional center as well. So and then I mentioned the Bleacher Girl in the Funhouse. We already talked about that though. King cameo. That's obviously a big one that's come up quite a bit. That was awesome. I definitely caught on a little bit quicker than everyone. Yeah, I think I even nudged you like, it's King. And you're like, what? And then like it's right when it revealed him. But like,
oh yeah, for sure.
That was really cool. I enjoyed that. I'm all for it. I want King in everything. He needs to do cameos in all of it.
For sure. He's the new Stan Lee.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is...
Go back to that list. Look how much he has to fucking appear in.
Yeah, you know what I would be curious about, though, is, like, I'd love to line up the dates, because King used to do cameos in his stuff. Not everything. He wasn't in Kubrick's movie or anything, but, like, in the 90s, I remember he was in a lot of those. He was in The Stand. He was in... was he in It? I know he was in Rose Red.
He was the pizza delivery guy.
He was that. But so he's done some cameos. I wonder, because like the first Stan Lee, I guess not even a full on cameo, but the first one would be Mallrats, right? First King or first Stan Lee thing. So I don't know if King's been doing it longer than Stan Lee, but King is definitely like, I think a lot of people are like, oh, he could be the new Stan Lee, and I'm like, yes, but also he's been doing it a long time. He just kind of fell off the map a little bit. I even think the Shining TV show, I think he had a cameo in that in some way too. I don't remember what role though. It's been a long time since I've watched that. So when you read it again, how will you visualize the characters?
I don't think I'd do any different.
How do you visualize them now?
I got pictures in my head, not anything based off of either.
Okay, so not the series then. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, then that's because I would be interested with people that are visualizing from the miniseries. Like, will this change it and make it to where they're now visualizing the people from these new ones here? Okay, so brass tacks time. Muschietti versus miniseries overall.
Sorry, I was reading the chat one more time.
Muschietti versus miniseries. Brass tacks time. Just
it's the movies are way better.
Okay.
I mean, that's not even that's not even fair.
No, that's fine. It is one of those things, especially for. I mean, Travis might agree with me. Like, it's the nostalgia a lot from the original that makes it hard, a little maybe harder to answer that. For me, I think it's Muschietti though. I think it's definitely just better overall. I love the rated R. I love like the acting, the characters. Like there's just more to it that I enjoy. Next part of the brass tacks question: Curry versus Skarsgård. There's a couple emails that mentioned that too, but I wanted to throw that out there just because, like, honestly, I'll just go ahead and say it. I think Skarsgård's better, and I love Curry. I really do. He's iconic, right? But like, God, Skarsgård's fucking performance is like really so goddamn good.
It's really good.
And he was given a lot more to be fair to Curry.
I think that's where I'm going to draw the line and say that I'm going to agree with you and say Skarsgård was better, but Curry was fighting the fight with one hand tied behind his back.
Yeah. And the other thing, I think the thing that makes it hard is Muschietti. I'm sorry. Skarsgård is part of a very good overall thing. Curry is probably the only good thing from that original.
For sure.
I'm sorry. Even in my nostalgia aside, the only redeeming quality, the only thing that brings me back to watching the original repeatedly is Tim Curry. The reason I don't watch the Shining TV show, the reason I don't watch some of these other like made-for-TV things that were in the late 80s, early 90s is because they're just forgettable. But Tim Curry is the singular force that makes it different than those and makes it and so like I think that just that to say that Curry is definitely it's I'm not saying this lightly. I love and respect Tim Curry, but I think Skarsgård did a better job. He's great.
Travis hit it on the head with what I'm saying. If Curry had the same situation as Skarsgård, he probably would be better. I would say the same.
Yeah.
Curry obviously in his prime, 90s Curry, not nowadays Curry.
Yeah.
But Skarsgård really did hit the Pennywise. He had the jokes, he had the emotion, and everything like that. And then he also had the creep factor that Pennywise has.
Yeah. It was just very unsettling for the most part when he's on screen. And Travis says machete all day. Skarsgård. Sorry, Tim. John says I like the movie better, or the movie's better. I did like the first part of the miniseries, but hated the second one. I like Skarsgård as Pennywise better. So they kind of add to those answers here. Yeah. So let me. So do you feel that the two films is the right delivery system for this, or do you think that maybe a series would be better?
I think the two films did fine.
Okay.
Series,
like, and I'm not talking like long. I'm just like, in my mind when I even wrote this, there was part of me that was thinking like maybe even go less than Stranger Things with like 8 episodes, but go like 4 episodes for kids and then 4 episodes for adults, just to allow like more expansiveness and stuff. Or do you think that would be?
I think that would be too much for the common fan.
Okay.
For horror, Stranger Things has creep and horror and action to go with it.
Yeah.
I think it is gonna. I think one of the big down factors of the miniseries was dragging, along with just horrible second half.
Yeah.
I think that the 2 movie format is perfect for it. I don't think that a series would do it any favors with the common fan. Me and you and Stephen King fans absolutely would love it, but.
And I think people that like deeper stuff, like people that really got into Game of Thrones because how deep and rich it was, because then you can get into some of those things like Machete mentioned, like the 1600s, and like there'd be so much more you could do easily. Like, right, Machete's first cut is 6 hours long. Like, that would be too long for what I'm talking about, 4 episodes apiece. So I don't know that, but I just think that it's a question to be asked, because there's some people out there that are like, man, it would have been maybe nice to see it as a show.
I just think that you would lose some common fans at that point, which would hurt.
Yeah,
the series.
It wouldn't have as much. It would never have the broad appeal that a movie did. Movies are different than TV shows. Even the biggest TV shows don't equate to what you see with movies. So yeah, definitely agree there. Then the last thing I have, and this is actually one that I actually was going to bring up last episode, but we ran long, and I know we're running long here. We just have some emails, and we'll close out. Can Andy Muschietti ever eclipse his work in It? And this is not to downplay Muschietti or his talent. But it kind of goes in the hand of what we talked about earlier, the iconic nature of It. With that, and with him doing 2 movies, even if the second one being slightly like what, but I think audiences, even though the critics weren't friendly to Chapter 2 as friendly, I think it's like in the 60s or maybe high 60s percentages. But like the fans have loved it. So do you think that Muschietti can ever do anything that will eclipse this, or is It going to kind of be his opus?
I think he could.
Yeah. I just wonder that.
I think that's way too much out there for him to do.
It's true, but I think it's just a matter of how big It is and the fact that he was the one to helm it. I just wonder if it's going to be one of those things like you could never get past, right? Like Mark Hamill, how long did he he was never able to get over Luke for the longest time. And eventually when he did, it was in a way that where he couldn't be seen. It's voice
the Joker,
acting.
the animated.
So it's like, I just wonder if just Muschietti, kind of like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it was just a question I had. I thought it'd be interesting to ask.
It's a good question. It's definitely one, but I think that with the world that we have, and what we have coming out and everything like that, I'd be safe to say that this may not be even the best King adaptation that he does.
Yeah.
For all we know, he comes in later and does a King adaptation that's 10 times better than what we expected for It.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible. I'm going to say, with the talent that he has, what he's displayed with these 2 movies, I'm going to say no. He's only going to get better.
And the only reason I would go the opposite direction, though, again, like I said, is not. I agree with you totally. The only thing I'm saying is just that It is such a big thing that like
it's too iconic.
Yeah, like I just think that'll be like the thing where it's just like, dude, you did that. Like, like Beethoven's done a lot, but there's only like 2 that people widely talk about, right? The 5th and the 9th. Like, I just feel like it might be like that, where It is just the thing where people just can't get past that overall. So let's go ahead and
emails. It's the emails. Tad's gonna read it. Someone mentioned this earlier in the chat.
Oh, that's not getting
deleted. God damn it. Someone brought that up earlier in the chat, and I'm like, not yet.
Yeah.
It's coming. Don't worry. Tad's got it queued up. He played it for me before we went live.
Yeah, indeed, as a sound test on the board side. So yeah, we're obviously a little long, so we'll go through the couple emails we got sent in and call it a show. Hopefully, everyone's okay with long episodes.
I'm starting to feel a norm developing here.
You know, for a while there, though, I think we were in the 2.5 to 3 hour range for a while, especially close to the movie time. But then I think it just ebbs and flows. I don't want to like ever promise anything, but like I think it just comes down to like what's out there discussion wise. So first up is Travis from Louisiana, which is obviously here with us in the chat. This is Heil Podslingers.
Heil.
Time to float, which is of course an awesome thing to say. I love me some Pennywise talk there. Sorry, the slide threw me off a little bit because I'm not used to seeing extra on the screen with emails. He says, I'm fresh off watching It Chapter 2 last night, and to sum it up in one word, epic. I wasn't nervous going into the film despite some of the mixed buzz I scrolled through in my various feeds because I had faith in Andy Muschietti and the powerhouse lineup of adult actors cast in Losers Club, and they did not disappoint, which is awesome. How did you feel going in, I guess? Did you have any apprehension?
No, we talked about this afterwards. You had that apprehension about it being a letdown, possibly. Me, with everything that I had going on last week, it really snuck up on me.
Yeah.
I didn't think that it was coming out until October. Thought it was going to come out closer to Halloween with the second chapter being released. So it really caught me off guard. And seriously, me and you actually had to scramble to get tickets before I left. So it was really just kind of like I went in with an open mind. I had no notion whatsoever of how it was going to. I'd watched the trailers and everything. I thought it looked okay, but I had no like, oh, this is going to be the best. Oh, this is going to be the worst going in feelings whatsoever.
Yeah.
I was Switzerland. I was completely neutral.
Okay. All right. So that's awesome. And you weren't disappointed as well. So I think you're along with Travis on that. He says, I will avoid spoilers because I don't know if you guys are going into that territory, but I will say the amount of source material adapted in the actual film blew me away. Not page to screen accurate, but the love for King's novel is on full display. And yeah, I think that's the thing that really strikes me is like, okay, yeah, there's some things that aren't there, but like you could just see the love of King. And I feel like that's what we've been getting a lot recently over the last number of years. I mean, even Dark Tower, like how many Stephen King references are in that? Like I just feel like now like it's the children that were raised on King that are now making the movies. It's not like guys that are like King's age or older than King where they're just like, oh, I'm going to do this movie of this fucking 20-year-old author, you know, like this 40, 50-year-old disgruntled, you know, director. And like now it's like dudes that are like, I was fucking raised at the teat of Stephen King.
It would be the same as if someone came to you and said, hey, Tad, we're going to wipe the slate clean and do a Terminator movie. Do you want to help us?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly.
That would be your, like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Tad's a Simpsons fan. Tad's a Star Wars fan. But there's a reason there's a big fucking metal hand sitting here on his desk in the office is because he is by far, I'm maybe not above Star Wars.
Yeah, I can't be above Star Wars just because of what Star Wars is. But I haven't done an episode on Palaver Tad with Terminator yet, but it's coming very soon. Yeah, because I'm getting in the mood because the new movie's coming out, even though it'll disappoint me. But yes, I'm a huge Terminator. So yeah, I think that that's showing, and that's what Travis is pointing out here. I think that's showing in just the love that people are putting into it. You know,
I think
Mike Flanagan as well with Gerald's Game, and I can't wait to see what he's going to do with Dr. Sleep. Like, I just feel like, and dude, even the fucking trailer for Dr. Sleep.
Oh, are you serious? I forgot about that. It's the same director from Gerald's Game.
Yeah.
Oh, the Dr. Sleep's in good hands.
Yeah.
Gerald's Game was good.
Yeah.
You, sir, have got to read Gerald's Game soon.
Yeah.
I don't know what I got to do, if I got to buy it for you or something. You got to read that. It's a really good book.
Okay. Yeah, no, I definitely want to, especially now that I've watched the show only a year or so late. But yeah, definitely.
Real fast before you move on with the email from Travis, I think Travis has a point here that it did well with one aspect, the Dark Tower movie, where a lot of people didn't. Maybe not for me and you, but a lot of people feel that the Dark Tower movie missed the Dark Tower feel.
Yeah.
This captured the feel of the book.
Yeah.
While there's Stephen King references in Dark Tower and a lot of Dark Tower references as well, it missed the feel for a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's what it got right. And that's where I think Andy is going to be really successful going forward, is that he understands what the fans want.
Yeah.
And understands that it's not going to be a copy and paste from the page to the screen.
Yeah.
That he is going to have to make changes along the way. So some of them are going to be dramatic changes. I mean, let's be perfectly honest. Making Richie gay, that's a pretty big one.
Yeah, that's a big swing.
But
for
does
sure.
it violate the character?
I don't think it does at all.
And that's where I think that is the change from the book to the screen, the adaptation that we've talked about. And you brought it up even earlier in this episode about The Shining. Like, fuck you. There can be more than one adaptation of Stephen King's work.
Yeah.
It's not a remake of The Shining. It's not a remake of Stanley Kubrick's film. It's a retelling of the original source material.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. He goes on and says, the comedy is on point. The imagery is flawless to me, and this elevates the first film even higher. If we were going to rank our favorite King films again, then It Chapter 2 would probably be my second favorite behind The Shining. The idea of an R-rated 3-hour blockbuster gives me hope that major studios will take more risks and give more power and control to the artists who make these horror films, which is actually something I never really thought too much about. But I'm on board. I mean, horror is like one that's a perennial evergreen in Hollywood. But generally speaking, it's you're going to do 90 minutes. I mean, I've even seen things like I do a lot of reading on like writing and screenwriting, and basically there's even people that say like if a person a minute is a page. So 90 pages is 90 minutes, and that's what you're supposed to be at. I've been told that there's like producers, if they pick up a script to a horror movie, they'll turn to the last page, and if it's anything higher than 90, they'll throw it in the garbage, and they won't even look at it, regardless of who wrote it or whatever. So I am fully behind the idea that we can get stuff that's a little bit more, I don't know, like I almost say Shining-ish, because Shining was not in the box of what most people think of horror movies. And I feel like maybe this might be something to show like the success of Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 might be like, hey, let someone do something that's a little bit crazier. Let someone go a little bit longer. Let someone do whatever. And give them a fucking budget more than $20 million. Give them a $60 million, $70 million budget to do a horror movie. Like,
I think the foundation for horror was laid with The Conjuring. That changed horror
more recently.
And Conjuring came out before it. And then did successful with its sequel, Annabelle, and now we have The Nun as well, right? That's all in the Conjuring universe.
Yeah.
So you see that they can build off of it. But I think that it took that foundation and built a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Built an architectural structure that is sound and is going to stand the test of time.
Yeah.
Which is what the studios were saying, that's not going to make us money, that's not going to bring any dinero.
Yeah.
And not Robert, just dinero. Spanish for money, Ted.
Oh, okay. I don't speak Spanish.
and so that's where I think that it combined with what's been done recently in horror.
Yeah, and because Travis mentions Midsummer, that was a 2.5 hour movie.
You talked about that one, how good that one was.
Yeah. And
everything. And I think that we're still going to get the 90-minute horror films. We still are already.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. You
think
still will. That's going to always be your standard fare. Mm-hmm. It's a matter of, are they ever going to allow something above the standard fare?
Branch out.
Yeah, allow people to kind of do something that's a little bit more out there and crazy. And what Travis is kind of hitting on is like, maybe this will open some eyes and open the purse strings ultimately. And he says it's a grain of a hope, and I like the idea that this could become a trend, horror equivalents to the superhero boom, if you will. And I think to a point, like, horror movies don't get the same kind of like budgets obviously as superhero movies, but I'd say that horror movies next to are probably number 2 next to superhero movies. Like, if you really look at it, there's a lot of fucking horror movies because studios look at them and go, oh, I can spend $20 million and make back 100. Like, fuck yes, like I'm going to do. So I feel like if you really look at it, there's a lot of fucking horror movies that come out.
It's very low risk, high reward.
High reward, yeah.
Especially if you're going to hit with something like The Conjuring.
Yeah,
the
ultimate Blair Witch Project, right? The original in 1999.
The original,
60,000 or 6,000. It's some ridiculously low amount of money, and it made like hundreds of millions. Like today, that sounds small, but like that's massive.
Well, but they do it all the time. I mean, even a show like not necessarily horror, but it had horror aspects. Cloverfield kind of did that.
Yeah,
with J.J. Abrams, executive producer of it.
Yeah,
because it was directed by someone that we know. He's directing something.
Yeah, we mentioned it. Yeah, I can't remember what it is.
I don't know if it was on the show where we were talking in the park and like, yeah, he's directing this. Oh, that's really cool. Because he directed Cloverfield.
Yeah.
But it's along those. Wait, was it Andy?
No. No.
Oh, okay.
He came on the scene a little bit after that with Mama.
Someone in the chat tell me the director of Cloverfield, and we'll go from there. But basically, I mean, the thing for me is that I see them doing that, but then also at the same time, they're going to see the success of it, and they see the success of like The Conjuring and stuff like that, and they're like, oh, okay. So there is a marketplace for that. I hope they don't oversaturate it. Because I don't want to go watch a 3-hour piece of shit werewolf movie. Because I'm going to go see it.
Yeah.
Because it's a werewolf movie.
You love those beasts. Yeah.
I love being scared. It's great. It's fun.
Yeah.
To come out and be, oh, shake that off now. I got to go home and try and get to sleep.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Or watching go out and go camping. That's what you should do.
Fuck that shit. But for me, it's
Matt
just,
Reeves directed Cloverfield?
Right.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
the guy that's directing the new Batman.
So yeah, we were talking about it outside after the show last time, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where for me I hope that it comes where Pet Sematary wasn't exactly a 90-minute film, was it?
I think it was pretty close.
Was it?
Yeah, I don't think it was that far over. I mean, just from the vague memory I have, I can't say with any certainty. But yeah, I think it probably was. But like I'm looking at like right now, I just bought The Exorcist on Blu-ray, and I already own it on DVD, obviously. But like The Exorcist, that's over 90 minutes, and that's a different kind of horror movie, especially for the time. And like I just wonder, can The Exorcist of today get made? Which I mean, theoretically it did, because I think Hereditary is probably the modern day Exorcist in a lot of ways. I really do. Yeah, I think that's. I really think that one stands really tall above a lot of horror movies.
Next time I get some alone time, where it's just my daughter and my wife are gone.
Yeah, your daughter can watch it. She's
stop it, Ted. Just stop. Just stop.
Yeah. Okay. So then Travis goes on and says, I want to give props to Bill Hader as Richie, James McAvoy as Bill, and James Ranson as Eddie. They were perfect. The rest of the adults were solid, and the returning kids were, of course, great. Skarsgård, Bill fucking Skarsgård. This portrayal puts him over Tim Curry for me. There, I said it, which, yeah, I think he said it in the chat earlier. but I had that because I asked you. That was one of the first things I asked you outside the theater. I said, I don't think I pressed you for an answer though. I just said it's a question I just definitely need to ask. Maybe we'll digest the movie first, but like Curry versus Skarsgård, like that's like I think because now that you have the complete performance, you can make that. Because after chapter 1, I'm like I can't. Ultimately,
it's not fair. You got to see what he does with the chapter 2.
Yeah. Travis says the audio dropped. You want to unmute your thing there and see? Oh, okay. No. Looks like
not
it's
for us.
Looks like it's you want to type that in the old chat there. Might be something on his end. Let's see. Then he says, yeah. So he's talking about, and yeah, I agree. I think that Bill Hader, and I'd say James Ranson and Bill Skarsgård are probably the top 3. And I think that James McAvoy, I think it's one of those ones. I think James McAvoy, I think, is one of those types that like kind of gets underappreciated because of how great he is and how much great stuff he's done. I don't think that people like give him credit when he does, because I think he did great as Bill. I really do.
He did.
But I think that he got overshadowed by a few others. But there's part of me that has to like stop and think like, am I just underappreciating the fact that James McAvoy is always fucking great and not giving him credit for it? Because everyone can do that. So, but I agree with him across the board there. Those are definitely the standouts for me as well. Said Machete stated in an interview that he is comfortable making it films and he feels like it's his second home. He said he's open to telling more stories in that universe. If he does, then Skarsgård must return as Pennywise. The dancing clown is an icon status to me, and the praise he receives, the good reviews overall from critics and fans and worldwide box office all seem to agree with that sentiment. And I agree. I would never want to see, at this point, I don't want to see, unless it's a complete new readaptation, I don't want to see anyone but Skarsgård in that role. I think that he's earned that respect now.
Oh, for sure.
Like if they're going to do one that tells the backstory, I certainly don't want to see him in any other form of any other actor.
Travis can hear again.
Okay, cool. And then he goes on here and says, if you go full on spoilers, and I'll be a little sad that I didn't get to mention a few things, but I know you guys will cover whatever I was going to say. I hope you enjoyed the film as much as I did. And I think we did. I really do. Like, yeah, don't let my small qualms earlier make anyone think that I was anything but loving of the film. I really did enjoy it.
Same here.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Like I said, even going that to me, that's always the tell is the second time, because for me, a lot of times the first time I'm so enamored in the experience and like the hype that I've been or whatever waiting or whatever it is, that like I can never have a clear picture sometimes of like, did I actually enjoy it? Because sometimes I'll be like, dude, I actually really enjoyed that. Then after I watch the second time, I'm like, oh, actually, no, there's a lot of issues I have with that movie. And like with this, so like with this one, like seeing it a second time makes me very safe in saying like, yes, this movie was awesome. It still felt short on the second time, even though I knew every twist and turn that was going to come. And it was awesome. So, yeah. Oh, and I had to tell you too, a friend of ours that we were going to go with, you and I, and then there was a kerfuffle.
Yeah.
She ended up sitting next to me and Hayden.
Are you serious?
Hayden, which is on the new.
Excellent.
Hayden's on the new Palaver with Tad. So anyone that's listening to that, you'll get to know Hayden, which Peter knows. But yeah, we had
I was really bummed that I couldn't see with Hayden.
Yeah, we had a friend that wanted to go with Peter and I, and it didn't work out. We had an issue with communication, but she ended up going with all of her nephews, and it was completely unplanned. She just happened to be sitting right next to us. Yeah, so that was like, oh, awesome, cool. Hey,
I'm glad to hear that she got to go see. That's great.
Yeah, definitely. And then Travis goes on and says, oh, and how about the cameo from Cy King? My theater lit up when he dawned the screen, and it made me happy because it shows that he's achieved the same sort of Stan Lee visibility with his fans and pop culture consumers in general. The meta commentary on everyone hating the ending of Bill's books made me chuckle too. Yeah, that was.
I couldn't get over that. It was, and they didn't just say it once, man. They kept coming back to it over and over again.
Yeah. Oh, I also want to point out that because this reminded me, the price of what's the name of the bike?
Silver.
They just call it Silver. Okay.
Yeah. Hi-ho Silver.
$300 is what Christine was bought for. So I don't know if that was a reference or if that was just like kind of a high price for a bike, 50, 60-year-old bike would be in modern day, whatever. But yeah, I thought maybe that might be some sort of like throw in nod. Yeah, but maybe not. And then he says, that's all for me. I loved it, chapter 2, and can't wait for my second viewing. Cheers, Travis from Louisiana. So yeah, definitely.
Travis has been in the chat for so long, like the last bunch of episodes. Honestly, I had no idea it was from Louisiana.
Really? We've had him on emails a number of times.
I know,
so
but it just hasn't clicked.
Yeah, I will say there's been a number of times with people in the chat, like it's just so disconnected from the emails that there's times that like when I make those connections, it's like, oh, okay. And then like, yeah. Because I think we talked about when he's emailed a few times, because you mentioned about how the Bayou is the scariest setting for you in the United States.
Yeah,
like that would be the most freaky deaky place.
I could die without even having to deal with anything from a horror film. Like I could die from just fucking swamp or an alligator.
Yeah,
like fuck that shit.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so next up is Aaron, and he says spoiler warnings to start, which is very kind. He says, I was fortunate enough to see It Chapter 2 Friday evening, and from start to finish, I was swimming in King fandom happiness, which I think we all were definitely, and that's awesome to hear. He says, I loved all the actors, but my favorite portrayals were Eddie, Bev, and Bill. So Bev getting added in there, but Bill obviously as well, again, McAvoy. But I will say, Jessica Chastain did a great job as
she was really
Bev.
good.
And she was the one that she fought for that role. Remember, like pretty much right after chapter 1 ended, she was like pretty much saying, I want to play Bev in the adult version, and pushed for it. So that's really cool because she did a great job. Also, I just want to mention, just because I'm thinking about it right now, is one thing I read is apparently Skarsgård enjoyed part 2 a lot more filming because he was able to kind of yuck it up with the actors, because he didn't do that with the kids. But with the adults he was able to, so he was able to just kind of enjoy. And you saw the whole thing I posted about
Hader.
Yeah, Bill Hader. And like, how did they do that shit with your eye? And he's like, you mean this? And it freaked him out.
He had no idea that Skarsgård can make one of his eyes wander.
Yeah,
is what I call it.
I think both. I think he could do both too.
Oh, he can do both?
Yeah.
And Hader walked up and said, hey, how did they do that? And Skarsgård's like, oh, I can. And Tad's missing one very key part. He's in full costume and makeup for fucking Pennywise.
Full Pennywise regalia.
And he does it. And literally, a photographer captured the moment when he does it. And you can see Hader just like having a visual recoil, like, ugh.
Yeah. I'll try to remember to add that to the show notes. But yeah, it's really good. Aaron goes on and says, they were the easiest to connect to, and I felt most true to the children's portrayal in Chapter 1. I love the new gimmick of having them collect their tokens to give us time to reconnect with their characters, and enjoyed some flashbacks, like the giant and Stan's deleted scene from Part 1, which I actually didn't know that was a deleted scene from Part 1, so that's really cool. Because that was a really good scene with good old Stanley boy going to the Curry version there. And he says, even at such length, I thought a few characters suffered a lack of screen time. I would have liked to have seen more of Bowers, and even though Mike's story seemed to be stretched a little, I didn't feel there was much of a connection with him. This goes to show how amazing the book really is because we got everyone's full story, which, yeah, is definitely true. There's just so much. Yeah, there's a ton. That's why I think, like, ultimately, like, the idea of a series is even possible is because of how dense the book is.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Then he goes on and says, the ending was changed from the book, but I thought it was a lot better than the miniseries. It's true that the book they used It's belief against himself, but the movie made it feel like that idea came out of nowhere right at the end. I love the effects, and I'm glad It still has his heart ripped out, even though the ending wasn't as cosmic as the book. And he says, in parentheses, with only subtle references to the turtle, it was still amazing to see. And yeah, we kind of covered Machete covering.
I forgot about the heart. We forgot completely to mention that, but yeah, that is a good call out, Aaron. Thank you for bringing it up. That one is pivotal for me. That's what you kill Pennywise, if you rip his heart out.
Yeah. And he said, he mentioned this, but I'm glad he did because I actually left it off my list once I saw he mentioned this in an email. He says, also, the ending was much improved with Stanley's heartfelt letter. With all the talk of bad endings, I was happy to see this one improved, the improvements in this one. I will say, dude, the shit with Stanley's letter was like, that did better than what King did. Like, that was like one of those improvements where it's like, because Stanley always just felt like kind of I mean, I get it, like there's the fear and stuff, but I always kind of felt like kind of a fuck you attitude towards Stanley for that.
That's how I felt about the losers in the movie.
Yeah.
Like just like, well, fuck you, dude.
But
like, really?
Even in the books, there's just part of me where it's just
that's
like,
what
really,
I'm saying.
dude? You're
like,
going to leave your fucking friends
exactly.
out to dry? Like, but like, so with his letter, like, dude, like Machete, right there, man, that's one of those rare moments where someone can point to and say, see, like The Mist, right? Frank Darabont with The Mist can point to that as well. But I think that Machete can point to that, in my opinion, and say that I improved on Stephen King's material by giving Stanley that letter, talking to them, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And he says, my favorite scenes were probably King's cameo and Stan's scary return. Hope everyone in the extended content enjoyed it as much as I did, which, yeah, I think so far everyone has. It's Long Days and Pleasant Nights, signed Aaron. And yeah, with Stanley's return, I will say there's some people that brought up Mordred on Twitter.
Okay, can I ask you a quick question real fast?
Yeah.
Are you saying Stan Lee's return?
No, Stanley.
Stan Lee, okay.
Which is Stan Lee's real name, right? That's where the whole Stan Lee came from, is his real name was Stanley.
It just, to me, in my head, reading through the chat and stuff, making sure I'm not missing anything, is I seriously think that you're saying Stan Lee, like Marvel Stan Lee.
Yeah, and that's where...
But you're saying Stanley.
Yeah.
Yeah, Eurus, okay.
Yeah, but see, that's what I'm saying, though, is Stan Lee, the iconic Stan Lee, that's a fake name. His first name is Stanley, and then he has a different last name completely.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So Stan Lee, he did that because he wanted to protect himself. He didn't want to be known as a comic book guy originally because he wanted to be like an author. So he's like, I don't want to be like polluted. So he's like, I'll just take Stanley, my first name, make it into my first and last name for these comic books, and then I'll be able to go and do. So yeah, that's just a little trivia for Marvel side. But yes, that
Thanks,
no, so the confusion is warranted because he literally
it sounds like you're saying Stan Lee, but you are saying Stanley.
Yeah. So Stan's scary return. People brought up Mordred on Twitter, as well as people brought up Mordred with the Chinese restaurant. There's the spider with the baby head. I think that's far more Mordred, because I think the Stanley, more I think about, that's 100% the Thing. John Carpenter's. Like the same creature. I think that Richie says the same line that they say from the Thing. Like that's I think even some of the shots compositions are like, that's 100% a tribute to John Carpenter's The Thing.
All I'm thinking about is, oh, there he is. Blah. Onto Richie's face.
Yeah. And then so he's kind of. Oh, okay. I will mention one other thing. I'm sorry because you mentioned the vomit sparked me. Dude, the fucking cut into that song when Stanley gets Eddie gets puked on, that was not good. That was terrible. Because it was just so small that like they didn't let it play out long enough to feel like it was meant to be. Because it starts playing that fucking 80s song when he starts getting yacked on by the fucking thing in the
leper.
Yeah.
Oh, in the basement.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it plays that song so short that it just doesn't work for me.
I gotcha.
That bothered me, especially the second time where I'm just like, because the first time I remember thinking like, that was weird. They didn't let the song play a little bit longer to like, because it just felt like, honestly, like almost like an editor made a mistake and accidentally like dropped a couple second clip of this song, and abrupt. Maybe I don't mean like terrible, but it was so abrupt and so abruptly ended that it just didn't feel right to me. But you mentioned the so that reminded me. Yes. So Mark from Indiana. Let me get the thing up here, and this is actually a new emailer. He says, "Hi, all pod slingers."
Hi, Al.
Hi, he says, "Let me start by saying I love the podcast, and I'm writing for the first time. Well, welcome
Thank you
to the extended quartet, and thank you for the kind words." He starts off, he says, "I believe I'm in the minority of people who didn't love It or It Chapter 2. I don't know if maybe I just have such an affinity for the miniseries as it was such a big part of my childhood, or because of my lifelong love of the book," which I think are both of those are definitely, I mean, like I said, like for me, the second half of the miniseries is kind of blah for me, but like I love the original. I love Tim Curry. And that actually had me apprehensive a bit with the original movie. By this movie, or by chapter 1, by this movie, I had let that go. But that's totally a legit process. Like, because it ultimately is not the book. It is ultimately not the miniseries. So if you have such a connection to those, this could easily be something that's not as
for sure.
And we've talked about that. There's been a number of people, with Dark Tower, with even some of the other highly well-loved King
Shining
things. People are just like, I'm not into the book or the movie because the book is my thing. He says, "Maybe I'm too critical, but I felt that a lot of the feeling that came from the book and the miniseries was missing. I also felt that they glossed over some important things, like how menacing Henry Bowers was, Mike's relationship with his father, and their time in the Barrens. And I will say I can kind of follow some of that. Like, I feel like you get him cutting Ben, which kind of gives you a little bit for Henry. Mike was kind of chopped a lot.
They changed Mike's story, which was really weird. No one really else got a big drastic change.
Not like that.
Because Mike's parents were very loving parents. It was the whole, Travis said it earlier, the racism thing.
Yeah.
They threw it out the window.
Yeah.
That whole shtick where Bowers, just comes at him, just yelling at him the racial slurs over and over again, trying to kill him in the library is, just hard. Honestly, it's always so hard for me because I listen to my audiobook in the car.
Yeah.
And when I get in after work, it's like 2:30, 3 o'clock. So it's the hottest part of the day. I live in Utah. It's the desert. I just listened to this book a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So I get in and have that scene playing. I want to roll my windows down because the air conditioning hasn't cooled off yet.
Yeah.
And I have Henry Bowers repeating racial slurs over and over again. I kind of can't roll my windows down.
Yeah.
I can't go through a drive-through.
Yeah.
I can't have my daughter in the car,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
It's definitely something that drastically changed.
Yeah,
Mike,
but it makes sense to change it from more racial to like more homophobic for the time frames. But I feel like just in general, Mike was like, he lost a lot in both movies, I think.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's valid
which is a bummer. And also the Barrens too. I will say the Barrens didn't feel that important to me in these movies, and it kind of reminds me of like the Judd and Lewis relationship we talked about with Pet Sematary, the new Pet Cemetery. It just isn't there, and it's like that's such a big thing in that book that like how do you lose that? And I think it's the same with the Barrens. Like, dude, like, what means more than the Barrens in that entire book? Like in both sides. I mean, the kids, it's like their thing, right? So as the adults, they go back to that stuff, and so like to have it so minimal, I could see that. I don't think I full on noticed it, but I could see where you're coming from on that, Mark.
Especially being a huge fan of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And he says, for nearly 3-hour movie, I felt like chapter 2 was rushed, and I could see that too. I do kind of feel at times the pacing felt rushed, because again, I just feel like there was stuff that was supposed to be there that got cut for time. So it just feels like at times you're just like fucking flipping through shit. You're just like, oh, whoa, what's going on here? Hold on, slow down here. He says, having said that, I think the casting was phenomenal. The adults match up perfectly with the kids. So casting director can give themselves a pat on the back because I think that's almost unanimous that they did a great job. I will give credit to Hayden, actually, when right at chapter 1, he actually threw a few names out, and Bill Hader, and I can't remember, he named 2. I think James McAvoy, I think, and he may have even had Chastain too, but I think that was right in the time period she started talking, so I don't know if he saw that, but like he called a couple of them where I'm like, and then when they announced, I'm like, Jesus Christ, listen to the names that Hayden said. So again, Palaver with Tad, check out Hayden. He's quite the
He's such a good guy.
Yeah, he's great. Mark goes on to say, I really enjoyed Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise. It felt like they gave him a lot more to work with in the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think even from the first one, yeah, Bill had a lot more in this one. He was able to really stretch his legs, as it were.
For sure.
Yeah, and then he goes on and says, I think that it was great visually, and the performances were great, but the writing and pacing fell short for me. Either way, it was cool to see it on the big screen in rated R format that excited me too. In the lead up for the first movie, I was feeling, and he goes on and says, I was feeling an HBO or Netflix series is the way to go for it. Maybe we'll get it someday. Hopefully not 25 years in the future. I'll now wait.
Next cycle.
Yeah. I'll now wait patiently for the Dark Tower series to hit Amazon, and we'll continue to enjoy you too and the Palaver. So
hell yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. If you've listened to our old episodes, if you haven't, you could feel safe that no matter what, if you disagree with us, we are never going to hold that against you.
No.
That was pretty heavy in 2017 with the Dark Tower movie. Go ahead and feel free to disagree with us. We'll allow it. So he signs off, long days and pleasant nights, Mark of Indiana.
Thanks, Mark.
So yeah, thank you, Mark. And then last up, we have Daryl from Minneapolis. He says, hi, all Podslingers.
Hi.
He says, I just saw it chapter 2 and I mentioned to you on Twitter that I would write in with some quick thoughts. So here they are. Positives. I thought it was really well done. I really enjoyed it. So again, for the most part, that's been mostly unanimous, except for Mark from Indiana. For now, that's written in. I'm sure we'll get some more people, and I know there's been a number of people on social media that were like not as keen on it, but so far what we've heard has been mostly positive. I like to think, or I like how they worked in so many of the facets of the book. They left out of the first movie back into the story, which is definitely true. An absolute perfect balance of humor and fright. There were times it felt more like a comedy than a horror movie. Then they would turn it right around and scare the shit out of you. And then he's the hashtag French chef finger kiss, which is like the, which is, that's awesome.
Magnifique.
And he says, Richie and Eddie absolutely stole the movie. Again, those are the ones that are definitely getting a lot of the love. And he says another shit ton of fun Easter eggs, which is definitely true. I can't wait for like a Blu-ray where I can kind of freeze frame some stuff and look at some different things. And he says favorite part, all of the F's or all the F you used to the critics who have ripped Uncle Stevie's endings. Laughed my ass off. I had to explain to my friends I was with after the movie why they kept going back to that joke. They all thought it was funny while watching the movie, but once I told them the backstory, they really found the humor in it. Which, yeah, that's true. I think that's definitely one that's for constant readers,
for sure.
Your average movie-going audience might be a little bit lost. I mean, except that you're setting up for Bill, right? That you're shit for endings. So. Negatives, the runtime. I've written you before and said that I'm not a fan of longer movies. 3 hours in the theater is a long time to sit there, in my opinion. There were stretches of the movie that were really slow moving. They really drew some scenes out that could have been cut back and still got the point across. And he says in parentheses, I know these are more nitpicky, personal qualms with the film than anything having to do with the actual overall story. And he says, overall, I thought it was a great way to wrap up the two movies. I think that I liked the first one better as a whole, but still really enjoyed this one. I know I've read potential talks of doing a third. I cannot stress enough how much I hope the wiser heads prevail and they leave things as it is. It would be simply a cash grab to do another. Even if it was a prequel type movie, I don't see a reason to do another, which I could definitely see. There's part of me that, like, if they were just going to go back and do some pickups and allow Machete to do a supercut and add some scenes, I would be totally into that. A full-on Origins movie, probably not. I probably wouldn't be as into it. I'll go see it, but I probably wouldn't be as into it. But I can certainly guess that Warner Brothers wants to maximize profits, and that would be, this is another one that's
for sure
done a lot of money.
Yeah,
so.
Give me a 7-hour supercut with like a 30-minute intermission in between.
With a dancing clown.
I'd go see it in theaters.
Yeah, me too. I mean, theaters would hate it because they'd get 2 show times per day, but I'd be down. Or we've mentioned in the parking lot that they need to make a box set. It's just a red balloon that opens up with the DVDs inside.
I still think that it should be a sewer grate.
Or you could do a sewer grate, yeah, and you have to like reach in to get the disc. And a little white hand comes out and grabs you. And he says, I hope you guys liked it. I can't wait to hear your reactions. Thanks again for all that you do. Signed, Daryl, Minneapolis.
Thanks, Daryl.
Thank you. And he, definitely enjoyed it. And then P.S. he sent another email that he forgot. He says 100% thought that the Stanley spider thing was more or less an Easter egg to Mordred. Did you guys have the same thought? We already kind of talked about that.
Yeah.
I do. That was actually kind of my first impression, was like, oh, Mordred maybe. But then like I was starting to see like all the stuff like that was like thing related. I'm like, that's the thing. And then like somebody mentioned on Twitter, the creature in the diner was very, or the Chinese restaurant was very Mordredy with a baby head on top of a spider body. Was, yeah. But I mean, we're all Dark Tower fanatics, so they're of course going to be what first comes to mind. So
That's right.
yeah, that's it. I mean, this has been quite, speaking of Titanic episodes in terms of length, this is probably one of our longer episodes in a good while. I remember one point we had a 4-hour episode, so we're just shy of that, but this will be the longest in a good while. I can't remember what that long one was. It was something to do with the movie, but I can't remember. So we'll go ahead and hit the outro stuff real quick and then wrap up. Hopefully everyone has everyone's enjoyed. Let's see, anything in the chat. Travis says, I want a prequel. Tisk, 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 Daryl. Mark says, I'm sure it has its haters. I've not seen it yet, but there's a film in all the history, or there's a film in all of history that you could talk about without getting some haters. Maybe Back to the Future. And then Travis says, my wife's a hater, but she doesn't care for Back to the Future. She's silly sometimes. And then Mark says, my apologies. I do know there's a famous critic that was lambasted the original Star Wars movie back in 1977.
Oh, really?
And he still stands by it to this day. I think he's still, or maybe he just died recently, but up till the day he died, if he did die, or if he's still alive, he still holds to it, that he still holds it like all of his fucking criticisms from 77. So yeah, you're right. Any movie, there's going to be some fucking person out there. So on the way out here, we'll go ahead and let you know if you guys can, if you want to find us, do that on Apple Podcast, on Stitcher, or any podcast service. If you could subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcast, that would help us a lot. If you want to find the show notes with all this stuff that we covered, you can find that at darktowerpalaver.com. And if you want to get in touch with us, Peter can let you know how to do that.
Best way to reach us is email, like Daryl, Mark, Aaron, and Travis did today for the It's reviews. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. You can also find us, it's facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. We're also on the Twitter. It's at darktowerpod. That's at darktowerpod. And then you can watch our shows live. It's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. Don't forget to hit like and ring the bell to get notifications for when we go live, so that if we do record in an off time, then you'll get a notification for when we go live. We leave all of our roundtables up. We take the book clubs down due to the copyright issues, but make sure to like and subscribe so that you can get those notifications.
Yeah, indeed. So for the podcast listeners, we'll sign off as we always do and say long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
All right, everyone in the chat, thank you guys for joining us. We had a good chunk of people in today. And thank you, Travis, talking about Palaver with Tad. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We can't wait to get Peter on there at some point.
You'll never take me alive. I should just hear me running out of the room.
Yeah. Yeah, so thank you guys for joining us. We'll be back next time with the book club. Will be the next episode. Of course, barring any crazy whatever's in the news that might happen.
Captain Trips takes me.
Yeah, that too. But like, if we get any kind of crazy Dark Tower announcements, maybe we'll be back for a round table. But Mark says, have you ever watched Jamie and Fuego? I don't know what that is.
No, me neither.
But yeah, thank you guys for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. Long episode. Of course, when Peter's getting a scratchy throat, we have a big packed episode. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging with us. And yeah, I guess see you in 2 weeks.
See you guys.
All right. See ya.